Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're getting into some creepy Reddit horror stories, and we have some amazing stories to dive into today. They're scary, they're weird, they're disturbing, and like the title says, they are creepy, so you'll want to stick around. I appreciate you stopping by, it means the world. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel and comment down below and let me know if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future. But yeah, this video will be long enough already, so sit back, relax, grab a drink, grab a snack, and without further ado, let's get into some creepy Reddit horror stories. My wife is convinced that I've been replaced. Please help me. I don't know what to do. Yes, it probably sounds insane. I should start with the backstory, but God, how hard is it to remember the simple, happy times before everything that happened? I met my wife, Catherine, when she was 24 and I was 28. We lived in a small town in Kentucky. You'd have trouble finding it even with a map, and the population was tiny. Everyone knew each other. I'd worked as an electrician all my life. First at a factory, then I started my own small business. Repairs, wiring, private jobs. My love life had never really worked out until I met her. She worked as an elementary school teacher. Smiled at every child, was kind and polite to everyone. My Catherine was the only ray of light in the darkness around me. I loved her for her simplicity. She could find joy in the most ordinary things. Morning coffee, the smell of wet grass, a cheap movie on the couch. We didn't have much money, but we had peace, a home, a dog, and that feeling that everything was right, that everything would be fine. I spent evenings fixing things while she wrote lessons plans or knitted. Sometimes we'd sit in silence, listening to crickets, or stay up all night talking about everything and nothing, thinking about children and what we named them. Back then, it felt like life had finally found its meaning. The problems began maybe 2 months ago. At first, small things. She started to have trouble sleeping, then began looking at me strangely, as if something in my face disturbed her. I asked if everything was okay, and she laughed. Sorry, just tired. The kids at school are driving me crazy. Gradually, though, I can't even say exactly when it got worse. She slept less, not because she had insomnia, but because she was afraid to sleep. I asked her what was wrong, but she said she was fine. Still, when we lay together, she'd suddenly get up and go into another room, returning only at dawn. She started having nightmares, but never told me what they were. One day, I lost my temper. You have to understand, I was just worried about my wife. From the lack of sleep, she started to look worse. Dark circles under her eyes, red eyes, pale skin. She lost weight. And every time I tried to help, she pushed me away. So I sat her down across from me and directly asked what she was dreaming about. She was silent for a long time, trembling and glancing at me furtively, as if she was afraid. And then, when tears began to roll down her cheeks, she whispered, "There's a man in my dreams. God, I'm scared, Tom." I went to hug her, and when I reached for her, she flinched, as if I'd frightened her. After that, things seemed to get better, or so I thought. How wrong I was. She used to ask how my day went, but now she just stared out the window. With each passing day, she spoke to me less and less, her words short and dry. And then she'd go to the bathroom or kitchen for some errands, closing the door behind her. And it wasn't just the silence, her eyes had changed. If before they were green, emerald-like, full of life and love, now her gaze made my spine go cold. There wasn't anger or hatred there. No, it was something closer to mistrust, wariness, as if she was seeing me for the first time. Over the next week, I began to feel anxious, a strange burning under my skin, as if something was wrong. But I couldn't tell where the crack was until I realized. She was studying me. When I drank coffee, I could feel her eyes on me. I'd look up and she'd immediately turn away, pretending to slice fruit, but her fingers trembled and the knife froze halfway to the board. I'd step outside for a smoke, and when I turned around, I'd see her peeking through the curtain, then she'd instantly close it. When I showered, I'd catch her watching me, studying my body. Then she'd run away. She started doing it even while I slept. She almost stopped talking to me, instead writing something in a notebook and hiding it as soon as I entered the room. Photos began to disappear from their frames. She'd talk on the phone with someone, but hang up the moment I came in. I made an appointment with a psychologist for us, but she refused and said she was afraid to be near me. It all happened so quickly. It seemed like just yesterday we were stargazing in each other's arms, and now this. The strangeness grew every day. Sometimes she asked me to sleep on the couch. I agreed, hoping it would calm her, but it was useless. Her paranoia only worsened. It got to the point where, when I tried to hug her, she screamed, "Don't come near me," and flinched as if I'd hit her. After one of those nights, I decided I had to find out what was really going on, even if it meant taking her to the doctor afterward. I pretended to be asleep when she stood in the doorway. Then she slowly approached soft, careful steps. She stopped at the foot of the bed, and for several seconds, there was a dead silence, broken only by her uneven breathing. I could feel her watching. Not just watching, comparing. That's when I became truly terrified. A cold dread twisting inside me as my wife became something I couldn't recognize. Then the bed shifted slightly down as she sat down on the edge. The air grew heavy. I could feel her stare physically, like pressure on my skin. Then her cold fingers gently touched my wrist, held it for a few seconds, then quickly let go, as if it burned, and whispered, "Pulse faster than Tom's." My heart clenched so hard I nearly twitched. She leaned closer. I could hear her breathing against my face, short, shaky. She smelled of lavender and something sour that made goosebumps crawl down my back. Her lips barely moved. I remember clearly. Tom had a small scar right there. She touched my cheek, but you don't. I clenched my teeth to keep from gasping. Those few seconds of silence lasted an eternity. What scar? I never had a scar on my cheek. I'd know if I did. I wanted to sink into the ground and scream all at once, but I kept lying still until I heard a choked sob and her fading footsteps. The door slammed. I opened my eyes, my heart pounding furiously. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night, too afraid to close my eyes. In the morning, I went to work early, dreading the hours until my shift ended. That evening, over dinner, I said, "Kate, we need to talk." "What's going on?" She gripped her fork so tightly her knuckles turned white, then looked me dead in the eye. "Tom, you've been acting strange." "What do you mean?" I don't know. Sometimes you look different. Sometimes your voice sounds wrong. You even smell different." I didn't know what to say. My head was chaos, and somehow I just laughed. "Kate, maybe you're just imagining things." "I don't know, Tom." My eyes fell on the knife rack. There was a clean strip of dust where the largest kitchen knife should have been, the one we use for everything. Bread, meat, anything. I distinctly remembered it being there before that night. My heart slammed into my throat with a primal panic. I looked at Kate, and she was staring right at me. I wanted to speak, but couldn't. It hit me then my wife might be planning to kill me. The next morning, she left for work, and like a caged animal, started searching the house. I hadn't slept in nearly 48 hours. I know I should have just left or taken her to a hospital, but she's my wife. I love her. She has to see that I am me. I tore through the apartment, frantic, desperate to find something, anything that would help me understand what was happening to her. And I did. After about an hour, in the back of the closet behind a pile of sweaters, I found her wooden box. Old, slightly cracked. The lid was ajar, and when I opened it, a thick notebook fell into my hands. It smelled of coffee and sweat. Her initials on the cover, written in her neat cursive. My heart froze as I realized it was the diary she had been hiding from me. The paper bent under my fingers, her handwriting familiar, but this time jagged, shaky, the page stained with what looked like tears. He's sleeping. I stand by the bed and watch. He looks like Tom, but he's not. Tom had a scar on his left hand from that accident by the river. This one's skin is smooth. He smiles, but the smile doesn't reach his eyes. Something replaced him. I keep counting days, marking steps. If the real Tom, my husband, is alive, where is he? A wave of nausea rose in my throat. With each page, her handwriting grew more erratic. I tested his speech. He says, "I love you," in the same tone, but without warmth. Not like before. Tom smelled of vanilla, but this one smells of dust and cheap cologne. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My knees trembled. The air around me tightened like a noose. I flipped to the last page. I can't let this thing stay in our house. It wears his smile, his name. I tried talking to it, begging, but it just smiled and said all the right words. It didn't defend itself. Maybe because it isn't afraid? Its right hand twitches when it lies. I could have killed it today, but for some reason I couldn't. I know I have to. For Tom. I won't let some monster wear his skin. My hands were slick with sweat. My whole body was sweating, even though the room was cold. I placed the diary on the bed and sat down, trying to process everything I just read. An accident? God, she was exaggerating. All that came out of it was a concussion and some bruised ribs. I stayed in the hospital for about a week. Yeah, 7 days. Then my phone rang, making me jump. It was Sheriff Martin, a kind old man I'd known for years. "Tom, everything all right over there?" Catherine called. Said someone's living in your house pretending to be your husband. I froze. "What did you say?" "Says you're not you. I've known her for years, always seemed stable. Domestic quarrel, huh?" "No, just, stress. She's tired." Evening came slowly. I sat on the couch, elbows on my knees, looking at an old photograph, the one that used to sit on our mantle before all of this. Catherine and I sat by the lake, smiling, her arms around me. The sun so bright that day we had to squint. I stared at us, at the little details, her blonde hair catching the lights, her hand around mine, the green shimmer in our eyes. It felt like a lifetime ago. When the door creaked open, I nearly jumped. My wife's, if I can even still call her that, steps were slow and tired, her bag thudding softly to the floor. She looked exhausted, her eyes red, her hair a mess. I stood, holding the diary. "Kate, we need to talk." She looked at me warily, like a trapped animal sensing a snare. "What's that in your hand?" Her voice was even, but something trembled in it. I found this. I need to understand what's happening," I said, showing her the diary. Catherine froze. For a moment, I thought she'd break down crying, but instead, she slowly stepped closer, looking straight into my face, her cold breath brushing against my skin. "So, what did you figure out, Tom? That I'm crazy? You think I've lost my mind, don't you?" "No. You wrote that I've been replaced. That I don't have a scar." She turned away, her lips pressed tightly. "Tom had one. We even joked it made him look tougher." "Listen, sweetheart." I took a step closer, a strange knot tightening in my gut. "I'm the same man. I remember everything. How we met, the candles at our wedding, how you laugh when we watch comedies, what you said about that stupid show when we finished it. I remember everything, Catherine. It's me. She stared at me, unblinking, her shoulders trembling as if she were freezing. I looked into her eyes, and there was something there. Pain and horror mixed together, as if I stood before her as someone both familiar and wrong. You say it like you've rehearsed it, she whispered. Because it's true. I stepped closer, my voice cracking into a shout. What do I have to do for you to believe me? What? Catherine said nothing, just breathed heavy, like she was finding herself, staring into my eyes. Then she suddenly backed away, step by step, toward her bag. I didn't realize what was happening at first. She bent down, as if for a handkerchief, and in the next moment, I saw the glint of metal. A knife. The missing one. Kate? I breathed, disbelieving. Catherine? Put it down. Stop. Stop pretending, you monster. I managed half a step toward her. She raised her hand. At first, I thought she was only threatening me. Panic tightened my fist. I wanted to yell, to grab her shoulders, to make her listen, but then a strike. Burning pain slashed through my chest. Everything went white. The last thing I saw was her face, so familiar, twisted by terror and despair at once. She stood over me, her hand trembling, her lips whispering something like, Tom, where are you, my love? And then everything went dark. I woke up in a hospital. At first, nothing but fog. Then the smell of antiseptic. The faint beep of a monitor. Unfamiliar voices. I tried to move my head. Pain shot through my body. The doctor explained I'd lost a lot of blood, but somehow survived. The knife missed my heart by an inch. Catherine had run away. I listened, not believing any of it was real. A couple of days later, Martin came by. I told him everything about the knife, the diary, her thinking I wasn't me. He listened, frowning, taking notes. When he finished and was about to leave, he turned back. Didn't expect this from Catherine. Don't worry. We'll find her. When you're discharged, come by my place. I got some Cuban cigars from a friend. We'll relax a bit. Without thinking, I said, I don't smoke. He frowned, about to say something, but then just nodded and left, closing the door behind him. For several minutes, I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to come to terms with everything that had happened. Then I noticed a small mirror in the corner of the room. I looked at my reflection and froze. My face was pale, my lips dry. But that wasn't what caught my attention. Interesting. Can eyes change color from green to blue? I lived completely isolated for almost a year and never knew. I'd worked construction for the better part of my 20s before the accident. I never had the know-how to get into engineering school like my parents wanted for me, but I preferred to work with my hands anyhow. Jobs came and went, contracts ended, but ultimately, I always had a site to work or a building to put up. When the Whitlam Hawthorne Group offered me a foreman position for the construction project of their new headquarters, I accepted in a heartbeat. Job security from a company like WHG, with a salary I'd only dreamed of and benefits to match, I thought it would be stupid not to accept. The foundation had barely been poured on the site when the collapse happened. No one knew who exactly was to blame, whether it was the surveyors, the engineers, or just some freak accident. But those of us caught in the rubble only had the parent company to point our fingers at. 3 men dead and 13 injured was apparently a serious enough legal threat that Whitlam Hawthorne opted to offer us such a generous settlement outside of court. You can judge all you want that my silence was bought, but 6 zeros on a check would buy yours too. In addition, they also offered me a systems job. I'd be able to work from home, and even a reduced renter's rate at one of their apartment complexes, in a unit that would accommodate the wheelchair I'd be confined to the rest of my life. Until then, I didn't even know that they owned any residential properties, but the complex looked decent enough on the pamphlet they sent me. After all, I certainly couldn't live alone in my current 4th floor apartment anymore. I moved in near the beginning of February last year. I won't lie, the adjustment to everything at once hit me a lot harder than it should have. Overnight, I'd gone from working outside every day to being restricted to a wheelchair I had no intuition for using and being stuck inside all day long. My hard hat and boots swapped for a work laptop and a filing cabinet. The depression caused by my new situation was only worsened when I got settled in. It was embarrassing how little I owned that would still be practical given my new lifestyle. So it didn't take long for the movers to bring everything over. I was moved in less than a day after I got out of the hospital. The apartment was a 1st floor unit for obvious reasons. The 2nd and 3rd floors each had units with patio balconies that extended an outcrop over my minuscule fenced-in yard. As a result, the already tiny windows in my living room barely got any sunlight during the day. Off to the side of my living room, I had a kitchen with lowered countertops and extended storage space on the lower shelves. My bedroom was spacious, with a wheelchair-accessible closet and a roomy attached bathroom. I wish I could say I was thankful, but the accommodations only reminded me that I'd never live the same life again. Please don't get me wrong. I'm absolutely not one of those guys who sees disability as something that makes someone lesser. My aunt was a wheelchair user when I was growing up, and I had an older brother with special needs. Both of them had my respect for as long as they'd lived. But both of them had died because, in one way or another, they depended on something that couldn't be provided for them. In her old age, my aunt fell out of her chair at home one day and didn't have the arm strength to crawl back up to reach the phone. The medics said that her pets had begun to eat her even before she died. My brother committed S-word because my parents refused to get him the help he needed. I still won't talk to my family for that. And now, after almost 30 years of independence and ability, it seemed as though every one of my prospects was ripped from me, and I was entirely dependent on the company that had caused it. In short, I was very, very bitter. In June of that year, it was as hot as it had ever been in my state. By then, I'd settled into a dull routine. Wake up, do a few arm exercises before I showered, eat breakfast, and then try to get some work done before lunch. What I did could barely qualify as work, but it seemed like the company thought it would be better to have me under NDA and payroll than risk me suing. Once lunch came around, I would check my fridge for groceries and add what I was running low on to my weekly mobile delivery order. It was so much easier to have someone else leave groceries at my front door than to find a way to actually get to a supermarket. I found a routine where I honestly never had to leave the apartment. I avoided human interaction those days, so it was easy to stay inside. The only voices I heard for months were my neighbors. From what I could tell, I lived underneath a married couple that never stopped fighting, and in the unit next to me there was an older woman with at least a couple more cats than our lease allowed. On one particular morning mid-June, as I got out of the shower and dried my head, I opened my eyes to find that the power in my apartment had suddenly gone out. It was inevitable. Everyone on the block had to have their AC units on blast. I finished drying off and for the first time since I moved in, rolled over to the curtain sliding door attached to my living room and went out into my small yard, where I knew I'd find the breaker box. The outside air was hot and heavy, and as I watched my toes brush against the grass that they couldn't feel, I noticed that without the noise of the AC units running outside, it was very, very quiet. Not even the sound of insects or birds filled the morning air. And for a moment, I let the morning sun rest on my face before it would rise behind the patio, overshadowing my yard. For as short as it lasted, the peace that overwhelmed me was blissful. The silence was interrupted by the sound of a sliding door from above, creaking wood and the sound of footsteps, followed by the familiar arguing voices I'd grown painfully accustomed to. "If you don't want to fix it, then I will." The wife's voice grew louder as she moved above me. "I never said I wouldn't do it. I said give me the damn minute to put my shoes on. Why do you always..." I zoned out as their arguing continued above. Even the briefest joy was fleeting. I thought as I opened my own fuse box and flipped the breakers, I heard my AC unit whir to life from outside my fence, muddying the soundscape once more with its mechanical whine. At least it drowned out the arguing above. As I struggled to figure out how to wheel back over the lip of the sliding door, I heard the arguing stop, and the couple's sliding door slid shut and closed above me. I managed to get back inside and hoped I wouldn't have to go out again anytime soon. I'm ashamed to admit that was the last time I went outside for months. I'd gone no contact with the rest of my family years ago, and what few friends I had lived out of state. I had no reason to go out anymore, so the summer's heat paired with my depression only forced me inwards. Wake up, shower, eat breakfast, work all day, sleep. Even the arguments upstairs and the occasional meow from the unit next to me became monotonous. I drowned as much of it out as I could. The same voices, the same fights, the same cats misbehaving, day in and day out. In fact, as much as I tried to ignore it, sometimes I couldn't help but listen in. The woman who lived above me, whose name I gathered to be Claire, was seemingly unemployed. She rarely spoke unless it was to accost her husband for wrongdoing or to complain. Her husband, whose name was Jason, maybe? He seemed to have some anger issues, but seemed more defensive than aggressive. Cold and distant paired with irritable and sensitive. A perfect storm. I never gathered the cat lady's name. Instead, I became very familiar with Greta, Priscilla, and Tom. Every day, the woman would try to quiet Tom for crying too loud for food. And sometime in the afternoon, she would accost Greta and Priscilla for fighting over a nap spot in the sunbeam. Having natural sunlight enter the room sounded like heaven. The voices were my only human connection. It was mid-September, when I attempted to clear my throat of my developing allergies, that I realized I hadn't heard my own voice in months. I cried myself to sleep that night, feeling more alone than I'd ever been. By October, the isolation became unbearable. I found myself listening to the voices more than I ever had wanted to, quieting my apartment as much as possible just to catch them when I could. The same fights, complaints, meows. They became my friends, my comfort. One night, out of some sense of desperation, or maybe just a form of entertainment for myself, I started responding. It wasn't much at first, just a quiet whisper in response to Claire's complaints. When I heard her hiss, "You never listen to me," I whispered, "I'm listening." When Jason or whatever his name was, sighed and muttered, "Christ, I can't do this," I chuckled and stuttered out a quiet, "Me neither." I don't know why I kept it up. Maybe just to hear my own voice. Maybe because in a pathetic way it made me feel like I was connecting with someone. I knew it was stupid and illogical, but it made things feel just a little less empty. It became a kind of game for me. Each night, I sat in the dim light of my apartment, sipping from one drink too many, and I listened. I let their words become ours. The fights, the meows, the mild chit-chat. When Claire snapped, "You never take me seriously anymore," I whispered, "Of course I do." When the old woman called out to Tom, scolding him for knocking something over, I grinned and mumbled, "Bad cat." It was more than a game. It was all I had. Then, about a week after I'd started, I noticed it for the first time. Claire had just shouted, "For once in your life, admit that I might be right." I responded instinctively, "Why should I when you're wrong?" Before I could finish my words, from above, her husband's voice exclaimed back to her, "But why should I when you're wrong?" I paused. For a minute or so, I sat intently listening. I knew her words had sounded familiar, but had I heard them have that same argument before? I brushed it off at first. Of course it sounded familiar. I'd been listening to their fights for months. I'd probably heard them bring up the same talking points 100 times, often enough that subconsciously, I probably just knew what he was likely to say. But then, the next day, it happened again. Is it that hard to get my car's registration done? I've been overdue for almost a week, Claire snapped. And I knew for a fact that I had heard that before. Not just something like it, those exact words, in that exact tone, in that exact order. That in itself could have been explainable, except the first time I noticed it had been in August. Her registration hadn't been expired for a week at this point. It had almost been 2 months. I turned off my AC and listened harder. My heart thumped against my ribs. If it's no big deal, why can't you just go out and get it done for me? There. She'd said that part too, I thought. I swallowed and realized my mouth had gone dry. My palms beginning a cold sweat as I grappled with the feeling that they'd done this all before, many times. Coincidence. That's all it was. Maybe their fights really were that predictable. I told myself to ignore it, but I couldn't. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, my ears straining to pick up what was being said above me. I tried to convince myself I was just being paranoid, but something felt wrong. That next day, I kept notes of what little I could hear around me on my computer. In the past, I paid little attention to what was being said and when, but on that day, I was meticulous. I kept every fan off. I didn't run my laundry. I skipped my shower. I did everything in my power to keep my home as quiet as possible to maintain the ability to transcribe every word being said. From the old woman next to me, 8:15 a.m. Oh, Tommy Tom, be quiet. I fed you already. From upstairs, 8:17 a.m. Claire on the phone. Yes, he left for work. No, it'll just be me here until he comes home for lunch. 12:32. Upstairs again. Jason, I told you to not slam the front door when you come in. You scared the hell out of me every time. All throughout the day, anything that I could struggle to make out, I made note of. The next morning, I awoke earlier than usual. I had my notes and I had some time, so I showered and made my way to the middle of the apartment to listen once again. I sat eagerly waiting, checking my watch and waiting for signs of life. Then, from the apartment adjacent to mine, at exactly 8:15 in the morning, the woman began to speak. Oh, Tommy Tom, be quiet. I fed you already. 8:17. Yes, he left for work. No, it'll just be me here until he comes home for lunch. And more. All morning long, I listened in awestruck silence at my entire day's transcription being reenacted word for word, minute by minute. By the time 12:32 rolled around and Claire complained about the door slamming, I was sickened to realize that on neither day, nor any other, had I actually ever heard their door slam shut. As if the same script was being read over and over, just muffled enough and just faint enough to keep me from noticing. I needed air, so I did something I hadn't done in months. I left my apartment. I struggled to wheel out into the complex's courtyard, squinting against the sunlight. The fresh air strange but refreshing against my skin. The apartment building wrapped around in a neat, uniform U-shape, with a mirroring building just across the narrow parking lot. The second and third floor balconies of each building were stacked like dull concrete shelves above my head. I looked up at the couple's unit just above mine. The small windows all had their blinds wide open, but I couldn't make out movement inside. I wheeled, turned around to look at the unit next to mine, where the old woman lived. Blinds open, but the same. No movement inside. I realized quickly that every unit in my building, in the building across the way, was the same. Blinds open, no signs of life. I sat there for nearly an hour, watching. Not a single shadow moved behind the windows. No doors opened. No one entered or left the building. The silence pressed against me as I realized that not only were there no people visible to me, there was no movement at all. No birds, no passing cars, no distant voices from other tenants. Just the wind and the faint mechanical hum of the AC units. Living isolated will do strange things to your mind. It'll make you keep track of things that societal norms would normally remind you of. But it also makes you ignore glaring truths right under your nose. It wasn't until I sat there, utterly confused, that I suddenly realized that I had never seen my neighbors. Not once. Not leaving their doors, not in the parking lot, not on their balconies, despite hearing their voices out there almost every night. I hadn't even spoken to anyone in person when I moved in. I'd filled out all my paperwork online, and I'd been driven here by a company vehicle when the movers said they'd brought everything over. A sick feeling crept into my stomach. I had lived here for 8 months. 8 months of hearing these people argue, of hearing the woman behind me talk to her cats. And I had never once seen another human being in the flesh. The implication had barely begun to set in when, almost in reaction to my realization, the blinds in the apartment next to mine suddenly closed shut. They were followed only a few seconds later by those belonging to the unit upstairs. And in almost a cascade, all of the open blinds for every unit in the building were closed. I moved faster than I had ever had in my chair. I wheeled quickly out of the little courtyard and into the parking lot street. Surely there had to be a leasing office somewhere nearby. As I reached the lot, I looked both ways and saw only rows and rows of identical buildings, the blinds on each slowly closing, the movement rippling away from me for what seemed like miles of units. I had never realized the scale of the complex. As I hustled to find any building that stuck out, I noted that I still saw absolutely nobody. Empty cars parked in lots, bicycles leaned against fences, varying patio furniture, even children's toys left on sidewalks as though they'd been returned too shortly. All signs of life, but without any life at all to be seen. After about 20 minutes of searching for any indication of an office, I returned to my home. My arms were exhausted from moving more than I had in a long time, and I knew I couldn't keep searching forever. I made it back to my unit not long after, with the surrounding windows blocked from view by obtrusive blinds. My home felt bleak, solitary among the rest of them. It didn't help that I knew that somehow I really was the only one here. I made it back inside and closed the front door behind me. Not 1 second later, as I turned to go to my room, a chime startled me, and I realized that my doorbell had been rung. I immediately turned back to reopen door, but outside there was no one to be seen. Just my weekly grocery delivery sitting neatly on my doormat, impossibly waiting where it hadn't been only 5 seconds prior. The following days were a blur. Had there actually been anyone outside to look at my apartment, they would have seen me wildly going from window to window, peering through blinds like a tweaker waiting on a package. For about a week, all of the arguing, the meowing, the idle conversation that had repeatedly permeated my walls went absolutely silent. Whatever was going on, it caught wind of my curiosity and stopped, as though to gather itself and prepare. And prepare it must have, since when the sounds of human voices and interactions reappeared a week later, they changed. New arguments, new discussions, even a new cat supposedly added to the bunch. The second day that the voices were back, I noticed that they were different from the day before. The conversations were new the next day as well, and the day after that. For 7 days, I almost allowed myself to believe that maybe I've been imagining things. I even began to hear the occasional car outside, slowly creeping past. Maybe something I somehow hadn't noticed before. On the 8th day of the return of the noises, however, my heart sank. Repeated phrases, returning arguments, and interactions that I'd already hastily taken note of 1 week prior. The next day followed suit. They learned, but only a little bit. Whatever loop was being played for me was now a whole week's worth of audio, not just a day's worth. Even the passing cars returned exactly at the times I'd remarked a week prior. But now that I was looking for them, I could tell that they were driverless. 2 weeks had passed since I left my apartment, and a thought occurred to me. What would happen if I tried to interrupt the routine? I checked my notes of the prior 2 weeks and began to prepare a plan. The next day, the old woman would chastise her cats for ganging up on the new kitten at exactly 9:13 and 3 seconds. However, I would knock on her door at 9:13, hopefully forcing whatever charade was about to be performed for me to have to adjust. The next morning, I prepared myself. I shaved for the first time in weeks, and I made sure I looked as presentable as possible. I couldn't give them any reason or excuse to not open the door for me. I waited in front of the door for about 2 minutes, my eyes locked on my wristwatch and my ears as alert as they'd ever been. The very second my little Casio turned 9:13, I knocked as loudly as I could without sounding aggressive, and was sure to stop knocking in less than the 3 seconds it would take for her to start speaking. I waited with bated breath, far longer than I think I should have. 3 seconds felt like a minute, and by the time an actual minute rolled by, hours had gone by in my mind. I was satisfied enough with my ability to interrupt the cycle, and as I returned my chair to return back home, something spoke to me from behind the door. "Who is it?" 3 words. 3 new words, spoken undeniably in response to me. But whatever was speaking to me was not an old woman. I don't know if I could even call it human. The words felt disjointed, as though stitched together from another phrase and distorted in a rushed attempt to sound coherent. I barely had enough time to collect my thoughts before the voice called out again. The words the same, but the cadence and tone shifted, attempting to emulate normal human speech. It sounded more natural, but it was still undeniably inhuman. "Who is it?" I'm your neighbor from next door." "Who is it?" the voice called once more as, to my horror, the door cracked open. I braced myself to see something horrible waiting for me inside. Some mockery of a human being waiting to lunge at me from the darkness. But darkness, inky black and concealing, was all that greeted me from behind the door. The door opened in full, and as what little sunlight that could have poured inside, there was absolutely no one inside. Absolutely no movement. No sign of life save for a voice that called out from the doorway, now in perfect form. "Who is it?" I peered my head inside the doorway, and as I did, I felt myself through a threshold, icy and cold. Worse was the feeling of loneliness that seemed to inject itself into my veins. In all my months of being alone, I had never felt it quite so intensely as when I crossed through that door. As I entered the living room, only one thing about the otherwise unremarkable home stood out. A wheelchair, fallen over onto its side, lay in the middle of the floor. I couldn't see anything around it, but it was surrounded by sounds of slow, methodical chewing and the occasional tearing of flesh patterned with a hungry meow. I left immediately. After that day, the pre-written schedules changed more often and far more sporadically. Sometimes I would go days without hearing anything. Sometimes entirely new arguments would appear in days I thought I documented. And occasionally, the cars I would pass would make a turn they hadn't before. Every action was hollow though, and every voice was attached to nobody real. I knew that much for certain. I started to review my options. I hadn't seen another human being for the better part of a year by now, and I doubted that were to change unless I somehow got out of this complex. But where would I go? There was no one to come and pick me up. I hadn't opened my work laptop in weeks, and I knew no one in whatever city I was in. Did I even know where I was at? I vaguely remembered the offer after the accident and the company men coming to get me from the hospital, and my mind struggled to remember the actual order of events that led me to living there. The more I puzzled it over, the less it made sense. As far as I could piece together, I had been in the accident, and some suits had visited me in the hospital when I woke up. They explained vaguely what happened and that the company wanted to avoid legal troubles, so they passed me over the check and the new job offer, as well as the pamphlet for the apartment. I remember signing my leasing information online from the hospital, and then I remember being brought here directly from there. Had it been that immediate? Had I been in such a daze I didn't recognize the strangeness of the situation? My thoughts were interrupted by a knock at my door. Not a doorbell, a knock. 3 solid knocks, echoing through my apartment. A chill ran as far down my spine as I still had feeling, and I slowly began to wheel myself towards the front door. I stopped in the kitchen to grab a knife on my way. Who's there? I asked, my voice tinged with panic. There was no answer for a moment. Then, softly and meticulously from the other side, I heard my own voice, broken and stitched together, call back to me. I'm your neighbor from next door. I flung the door open, brandishing the large steak knife out into the open air. I couldn't see anyone in front of me, but I knew that something was there. I sat, wildly swinging the knife in front of me, and the voice called again from right in front of my face. I'm your neighbor from next door. There was a shimmer in the air, a glint of sunlight, a distortion outlining a shape that was unambiguously humanoid, and it was entering the threshold of the door, slowly creeping towards me. This was my only chance. With all the strength I could muster, I hurled the knife towards the no one in my entryway, and as it passed through the glimmering shape I knew, so could I. I pushed myself towards the no one, and as I entered its form, a cold I'd only ever felt once before shot through my veins. The icy sting sought to freeze me in place, and the empty solitude that pressed in around me should have taken all the steam out of me. But I didn't let it. I could feel it now. It was real. It could be escaped. I made my way through the form, and as I looked back as it turned towards me, its non-existent unbeing making haste to attempt to swallow me up once more. I was faster than it though, and as I turned the corner out of the courtyard into the street, I forced myself to ignore the burning of my arms and kept pushing myself onward. As I rolled as fast as I could, I looked at the identical buildings surrounding me. Through every blind, through every cracked door, there was nothing and no one watching me. I felt eyes, hungry and jealous, piercing me from all sides. No one was trying to keep me here, but I wouldn't give it the satisfaction. I caught glimpses from my peripheral vision of glimmering nothings, clambering out of doors and emerging from parked cars. I felt chills run through my body once more as I must have passed through a group of them, their arms outstretched attempting to grab me. Whatever they were or weren't, I don't think they could touch me, but I could feel them. More and more of them piled out of the front doors, sprinting towards me. The air around me began to ripple as they amassed in numbers. It reminded me of waves of heat emanating from the roofs of cars under the summer sun. No one's fingers clawed at me as I pushed through thousands of them. Voices crackled, warped, stitched together nonsense, surrounding me with their fractured cries. After what felt like an eternity, through the shimmering crowd that wasn't there, I saw what I'd been longing for. The end. I had reached the edge of the complex. It wasn't anything special as far as I could tell. No barrier or wall that would hinder my escape. I pushed myself harder and faster than my exhausted arms should have allowed. But every icy claw that passed through my blood renewed my vigor. The moment I crossed the threshold, the screams collapsed into silence. The air behind me felt full. No empty, frozen fingers, no warped voices, no nothing. I didn't dare look back though. Not yet. I looked out ahead of me and had never been more relieved to see a shitty Dollar General in my life. I cried sweet tears of joy when I laid eyes on a struggling jogger. Fat, sweaty, human. I rolled over the crosswalk and came to rest at the bus stop across the street. I finally let my aching arms rest, and they collapsed to my side. I sat for a moment, tears rolling down my cheeks and reeking of sweat and body odor. I must have looked insane even to the scraggly homeless man that sat on the bench, but I didn't care. He would never know it, but I loved him simply for being there. I eventually found my strength and warily turned my wheelchair towards the complex that had entrapped me for a year of my life. I don't think I'll ever be able to explain what I saw. Before me lay an unassuming dirt lot, not larger than a football field. Unattended construction equipment lay dormant, and a porta potty lay toppled and vandalized in the back corner. Surrounding the perimeter of the lot was a chain link fence. A land development sign stood at the perimeter, its red letters crisp and clean, as if freshly posted, beneath an artist's rendering of a sleek new building. The words, "Coming soon, Whitlam Hawthorne Research Complex." My son keeps drawing a man we've never met. I think he's real. Written by This Chemical 13. My son Alex has always loved drawing. Crayons, markers, whatever he could get his little hands on. At first, it was the usual stuff. Dogs, stick figure, family portraits, the occasional scribble that only he understood. But last month, his drawings changed. It started with a man. A tall figure with no hair, hollow eyes, and a stretched, too wide smile. The first time he showed it to me, I felt uneasy. "Who's this, buddy?" I asked, keeping my tone light. Alex grinned. "That's Mr. Threads." The name made my stomach twist. "Where did you hear that name?" "He told me," Alex said simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "He stands in my doorway at night." I almost dropped the paper. At first, I chalked it up to a child's imagination. Kids invent imaginary friends all the time, right? But the drawings didn't stop. They got worse. Every day, Alex brought me a new picture of Mr. Threads. The same elongated smile, the same hollow eyes, and every time Mr. Threads got closer. One drawing showed him at the end of the hallway, another in the living room, then standing behind me. The night I found a picture of Mr. Threads standing next to Alex's bed, I didn't sleep. Last night, I heard something. It was past midnight, and I was getting a glass of water when I heard Alex talking in his room. Soft, hushed whispers. I pressed my ear close to the door. "But you don't have to be mad," Alex was saying. "I told her about you. She believes me now." A long silence. Then, in the quietest voice I have ever heard my son use, "Okay, I'll tell her." I burst through the door. Alex was sitting up in his bed, staring at the open closet. "Who are you talking to?" I demanded. He blinked, like I'd just woken him up. "Mr. Thread says you should sleep with your door open tonight." My stomach dropped. "Why?" Alex's lower lip trembled. "So he can come in?" I slept with the door locked. This morning, Alex wouldn't look at me. He just kept scribbling furiously, his crayon scratching against the paper. When I finally coaxed it out of his hands, my breath caught in my throat. It was me, sleeping. And behind me, looming over the bed, Mr. Threads. I grabbed my son's shoulders. "Alex, tell me the truth. Have you actually seen him?" He didn't speak, just gave a tiny, reluctant nod. His little hands gripped the fabric of his pajama pants, and he bit his lower lip. I tried to steady my breathing. "When?" "Every night," he whispered. I thought I might be sick. "What does he do?" Alex hesitated, then pressed his hands over his eyes. "He watches, but he doesn't have eyes, so sometimes he borrows them." A sharp chill ran down my spine. "What do you mean, borrows them?" Alex shuddered. Sometimes I wake up and everything is blurry, and my eyes hurt. His voice wavered. That's when I know he's using them. My hands started shaking. I ran to the bathroom, flipping the light switch, and studied my son's face. His pupils were dilated, like he'd been staring into pure darkness for hours. I turned his head gently to the side, checking under his eyes dark circles, so deep they looked bruised. "We're leaving," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. That night, I kept every light on in the house. I let Alex sleep in my bed, keeping him tucked close to me, his small fingers gripping my sleeve like he was afraid I'd disappear if he'd let go. I didn't blame him. I felt the same way. Sleep didn't come easy. Every shadow in the room felt like it was stretching toward us, reaching. I kept reminding myself that it was just in my head, just my own paranoia turning shapes into monsters. Then, at 3:07 a.m., Alex gasped awake. I bolted upright. "What is it?" He trembled violently, clutching at his face. "Mom, my eyes, I can't see." I grabbed his shoulders. It's okay, I'm here, you're safe." But even as I said it, I saw the shift in the room. The light flickered, just once, then again, and the temperature dropped. I turned slowly toward the bedroom door. It was open. A long shadow stretched across the floor. Alex sobbed into my chest, his tiny fingers curling into fists. "He's here," he whimpered. I didn't look. I couldn't. Instead, I pulled Alex into my arms, stood up, and backed toward the furthest corner of the room. My heart slammed against my ribs, every instinct screaming at me to run, but I didn't know where to go. Then, the whisper came. "You see me now." I snapped my eyes shut. It was right there. I could feel it, a presence looming over us, stretching, growing, filling the room with something cold and unnatural. My breath came in shallow, rapid gasps. I felt something graze my cheek. I ran. I don't remember getting to the car. I barely remember buckling Alex in, my hands fumbling as I tried to still my shaking fingers. All I remember is driving, tearing down the street at 3:15 in the morning, refusing to look in the rearview mirror. Alex sobbed quietly in the back seat. "He knows where we're going." I didn't respond. I just kept driving. That was 3 days ago. We're at my sister's house now, staying in her guest room. Alex hasn't drawn anything since we left. He still wakes up in the middle of the night, gasping, clutching at his face, shaking uncontrollably. I don't know what to do. I don't know if running was enough, because last night I woke up to Alex standing by the window, his hands pressed to the glass. "He's outside," he whispered. "He wants to come in." And this morning, I found a drawing crumpled under his pillow, a sketch of my sister's house, with Mr. Threads standing at the front door. I Was Dead for 30 Days, written by Satterdead. It was a 8-hour drive back home. I'd been visiting my dad for his birthday, but I had to get home. I hadn't been able to get time off work the next day, so it was going to be hell and a half if I didn't get there by morning. The weather wasn't on my side either. What started as a mild wind had escalated to an incessant howling, rocking my car with gusts of wind that nearly knocked me off course. I could barely hear the radio over the raindrops knocking on my sunroof. I was 6 hours in when I came across a fallen tree. Another car had stopped ahead and called it in, but I didn't have time to stick around. I took a detour onto a smaller road. It was rural Minnesota. What's the worst that could happen? The road was more pothole than asphalt, but my GPS was still on point. It showed a 20-minute detour, but I figured it'd still be quicker than waiting for that tree to be cleared. I rounded a corner and came across a long stretch of road overlooking the countryside. There was a wheat field to the left and a pine forest to the right. It was dark, so I couldn't see anyone up ahead. No lights. I kept going straight, leaning back in my seat. All of a sudden, a car. It was parked by the side of the road. I swerved, but I ended up smacking it and cracking a taillight. I came to a full stop about 20 feet further down the road. Looking back, I bit my lip. I could keep going and that'd be that, or I could leave my insurance information. I dug around in my glove compartment and found a slip of paper, tucked it under my jacket, and got out. I made my way to the parked car. It was a dark beige sedan that looked like it'd been dug out of the 90s. I didn't want to pry, but I couldn't help but see something odd. There was at least 3 duffel bags in the back seat. I got my papers out and slipped them under the wipers, along with a $20 as an apology. I was walking back to my car when I noticed someone approaching. I noticed a couple of details. They had a dirty shovel flung over their shoulders and were holding another duffel bag. That made it 4 in total. I had this uneasy feeling. I was looking at something I wasn't supposed to. This person had been digging something up in the middle of a rainstorm. I couldn't imagine they wanted someone to see them do it. I got out of the rain and into the driver's seat. I put the key in and fired up the engine. It made a bit of a huffing noise as if wanting to stall, but it didn't. Then someone knocked on my window. I could have put my foot on the gas, but I didn't. Instead, I turned my head, only to see a stern-looking man in his early 50s. He had a thick mustache and a black baseball cap, a look that made me think of someone trying their best to be forgettable and neutral. He was holding a gun. He made a rolling motion with his hand. "Let's have a short conversation before you go off running," he said. "It'll just be a couple minutes." I rolled down the window. It was dawning on me just how bad this could get if I wasn't careful. We were alone on a small, nondescript road during bad weather, and no one knew I was there. And he didn't look like the type of person who was eager for a rational discussion. Sorry about the taillight," I said. "Mind lowering that pistol there?" He forced a smile. "I wouldn't mind, yes." He reached his arm in through the open window and unlocked the door. Opening it, he mentioned for me to step out. I looked back at the steering wheel, not sure what to do. Maybe I could get away if I did something sudden. "I wouldn't do that," he said. "It'll get messy." I didn't see anything," I assured him. "I'm just passing through." "I'm sure you didn't. Now step out." Looking down the barrel of a gun, I was inclined to listen. I stepped out. My mouth went dry as my senses heightened. I could feel the blood rushing to my head. "I don't know what you think I saw," I said. "It was just a duffel bag and a shovel. I don't even know you." "Just step right this way," he said, pointing me to the side of the road. "I didn't see the license plate. Hell, I can hardly see you. It's raining too much, you know?" "Fair enough." He pointed at something up in the pine woods. "Can you see that?" he asked. I leaned in and looked closely. There was nothing up there, just pine trees and rain. Then I realized what he was doing. He was making me stand still. I didn't have time to turn my head before he fired the gun. Now, a lot of stories would have ended there. That would make sense. Even though I barely knew the guy or what he'd done, he wasn't taking any chances. He shot me point blank in the head. I had no idea what happened next, but I figured out a couple of things. He pushed my car into a lake, and he buried me in a shallow grave just east of that road, in a field, right up a hill. Writing it out like this, it seems almost detached. Like it didn't really happen to me. Like it happened to someone or something else. But I can't say it any other way. He killed me, and I didn't even understand why. In terms of time, it felt like blinking. One moment there's a flash and a bang. The next, I'm inhaling dirt. I almost choked then and there. A first sour breath, bitter with the salt of the earth. I flailed around until the air touched my fingertips. Then I dug. I gasped for breath, but all I got was mud and grass. Finally, My face broke the surface. I wheezed, sucking in the night. Only then did I realize that my heart was still beating out of my chest. I was still surprised by the loud sound, the gunshot. The rain had seemingly cleared up, but it was late. I was out in a field. It was a small glade in the middle of a pine forest, where I was surrounded by these strangely colored sunflowers. They were probably white, but they looked kind of blue in the moonlight. I just had the clothes on my back. He'd taken my phone, my car keys, my smartwatch, everything. He'd buried me alive, I thought. But the strangest thing about it was that right where I'd been lying, there was a cross. It was crude, a couple of broken 2x4s nailed together. It looked more like a plus. But what the hell kind of murderer leaves their victim alive and marks their grave? That's when it hit me. He didn't leave me alive. He'd shot me in the back of the head. I touched my skull back to front, but there was nothing wrong with it. Not even a bruise. Physically, I was fine, but that just didn't make any sense. What the hell had happened? How could I be okay? I had no idea where to go, so I just picked a direction and hoped for the best. It was dark, but the moonlight helped a little. Looking back at that weird glade, I couldn't help but feel watched, as if those creepy sunflowers were all turning my way. First things first, I was gonna go get the police. This man was a menace. I had the time and a clear description in my head. The rest would work itself out. It took me about 20 minutes to make it to the road. The same road where I'd run into him, I figured. Or maybe that's just what all roads look like in rural Minnesota. In 2 hours, only a single car passed me on that road, and they weren't eager to stop for hitchhikers. I could see why the guy had picked this spot. It was the middle of nowhere. That had ended up there just by bad luck. Wrong place at the wrong time, apparently. Astronomical odds. I'd been following the road for longer than I care to admit when a couple of headlights slowed down behind me. Looking back, I could see a middle-aged woman driving a pickup. "You lost?" she called out. "Sort of," I said, turning my pockets inside out. "Robbed." "Are you okay?" she asked. "Not really." "Are you on drugs?" "I wish." She scoffed at me and leaned over, opening the passenger side door. "Get in." My eyes went heavy the moment I sat down. I felt the heat of the car melting my bones, turning my body into butter. I almost nodded off then and there. "Looks like you've had one hell of a night," she said. "Where are you headed?" "The police, I guess," I said. "Can you call them?" "I can, but there ain't no one around till morning," she said. "Unless it's urgent." "It's kinda urgent." "Look, you're not on fire and no one's hurt. They're not coming out here till morning. That's all I'm saying." I wiped some dirt off my face and nodded. "Nearest motel then?" "Nonsense," she smiled. "You can have my kid's room. Just for the night." "Appreciate it." Her name was Mary Ann. She worked at a water treatment plant not too far away and was coming home from a night out with her work friends. As a single mother to a now grown kid, she didn't mind leading some empty nest space out to a stranger in need. I feel like between Mary Ann and the man who shot me in the head, I'd managed to find the two kinds of people you might run into in rural Minnesota. I got to borrow a room next to her garage for the night. I took a shower and threw my clothes in the washer. Mary Ann didn't have much food to share, but she microwaved me some leftovers. Lasagna. We talked a bit about what happened, but I didn't have much to say. It was so hard to describe. I couldn't just babble on about how I'd crawled out of a hole in the ground, so I said I'd been mugged and had my car stolen at gunpoint. It was an uneasy sleep. It's like my heart wouldn't settle down. No matter how comfortable I was, I kept feeling like I was on the edge of bursting into a sprint, like there was still an immediate danger. It was like I kept hearing the click of the gun, anticipating the painful flash of the bullet burning past the hairs on my neck. The following morning, Mary Ann made breakfast. She was chatty, and making breakfast brought out the people person in her. "That road is trouble," she said, "but I guess you're not the worst thing we found there." "Oh yeah?" Yeah, she continued. Did you see the, Hold on. She wiped her hands on a towel and lent me her phone. She had a social media post up about a dead man. I recognized him. It was the man. The one who shot me. There wasn't a lot to it. A small post talking about how he'd been a couple weeks from turning 71 and how he'd passed suddenly in his car. There were dozens of posts talking about how much they were going to miss him and how great of a guy he'd been. I figured they hadn't known much about his extracurricular activities. Good people don't shoot other good people in the head. Before I handed her the phone back, I noticed something odd. Right there, by the time, the date. 31 days had passed. I almost choked on my orange juice. This was beyond explanation, and it didn't make any sense. 31 days? I handed Marianne her phone back. I mulled the options over my head. I wanted to call my mom, but I couldn't remember her number. It was saved on my phone, which was gone. Besides, what would I tell her? Again, you can't just tell people you've crawled out of a hole in the ground. I figured I could do a little research, try to figure out what happened before I went to the police. Maybe there was a logical explanation for all of this. Maybe I just missed it. If so, a little research was a small price to pay to not sound insane. Thanks, I said. You know where this guy lived? You know him? She asked. Sort of, I said. An acquaintance. I mean, yeah, I can show you his place if you want. I had to know more. There were too many questions in the air right now, and I had to get a couple of answers before I started to untangle it. If I could figure out why this guy had shot me in the head, maybe I could go to the police with something concrete. How the hell 31 days had passed would have to wait. Marianne drove me downtown. I don't remember the name of the town, but it was small. Basically just a collection of houses by the side of a quasi-busy street. It'd gone from late autumn to early winter in those 31 days, and it showed. The morning frost was just melting off the sleeping trees. She turned onto a small road just off Main Street and up a hill. The house we looked for stood out like a sore thumb, the only white house with red detailing. It looked like a big shed had swallowed a candy cane. Hideous. It was clear that no one had been there in a while. Some kids had broken the windows. A couple of trees in the yard cast long shadows over the bare dirt, accentuating the Midwestern morning sun. There was that small town smell in the air. Mud, melted frost, diesel. I thanked Marianne and she handed me $50. There's a motel just down the street, she said. Ought to be a couple of rooms there if you need some space. God bless that woman. As she drove away, I walked up to the front door. The lock was broken and there were a couple of spray tags on the side. The door was barely holding onto the hinges, having been rocked back and forth by harsh winds. The inside was pretty lackluster. The guy was clearly a loner. No pictures on the walls, no pets, barely any decorations. A couple of polite postcards from acquaintances piled up in the hallway. Empty plates on the kitchen table. Checking the fridge, there was half a six-pack and a jar of pickles. That's it. It was empty. If this guy was turning 71, there were no signs of a long life. In fact, there were no signs of anything. You could tell there'd been people going through the place. Furniture had been moved and broken. There were scratch marks on the floor where someone had tried to break the floorboards. There was also some cigarette smoke. Maybe the guy was a chain smoker, but the place didn't smell like it. I wandered around, not really knowing what to look for. I had this feeling that knowing why he tried to kill me might shed some light on the things, but it really didn't. It's like the post said. He just tipped over and died. It was hard to accept that maybe, just maybe, I'd just been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe I'd never know for sure. Still, the guy had it coming. Whatever the reason, you just don't kill people in cold blood. Leaving that house behind, the question remained, why me? What'd I do? There was no point in grinding it over and over in my head. I figured I'd get a room at that motel, get in touch with the police, and get back on the road. My family had to be worried sick. I felt a little bad for spending this much time running around with this nonsense, but it bothered me to no end. You don't forget waking up in a shallow grave. You just don't. I followed Marianne's directions and came across a gravel path, a long, winding path over a hill and through the pine woods. I spotted a peculiar tree in the distance, a dead, leafless oak. I decided to stop there to rest my feet for a bit. It had a root that curled around itself, making it an excellent seat. I sat down to ponder my options, but see, I do this thing when I'm in deep thought. I scratch something over and over with my left index finger. There's something about the sensation of running your finger over something textured that just numbs my mind. So as I sat there and considered my next move, I did just that. I scratched a bit. Right in that exact spot, something had already scratched the bark off. I pulled my finger back, sticky with sap. Someone had been sitting here, just like I was. They'd been scratching that spot, just like I'd done. Odd. Following the trail, I ended up next to two buildings down by the main road. There it was, the motel and a supermarket. There was a woman outside the motel smoking a cigarette. She kept looking my way, so I waved at her. "You here to pick up your stuff?" she asked. "What?" "Your stuff," she repeated. "I'll throw it away if you don't." "No, yeah, I'll get it. Sorry." I had no idea what she was talking about, but she clearly intended to talk to me. There was no mistaking it. She'd seen me before. She was very comfortable in that fact, so much of it that it made me question if we had history. I joined her outside the motel and waited for her to finish her cigarette. I got a stern talking to about leaving things behind. Apparently, there was only so much space in the lost and found. I apologized, which eased the tension a bit. Maybe she was expecting some kind of entitled big city folk talk from me. She said she'd give me 20 minutes to clear out the room and handed me a key. I hurried down the hall and up the stairs. Standing outside that room, I didn't know what to expect. I'd never been there before. I'd never seen this woman, and yet she seemed to know me, or at the very least, she'd seen me before. When I entered, I could tell someone had been living there. There were some clothes and a couple of items scattered across the nightstand. It didn't take long until a chill crawled up my spine. The clothes in that room were my size. There was a toothbrush in a green plastic case in the bathroom, just like I always keep. I'm a bit squeamish about bacteria, which begged the question, had I been there before? I decided to do a test. If I had been there before, my phone would be tucked away and hidden near the bed. I'd had some bad experiences with staff stealing my electronics in the past, so I leaned over the bed and fumbled around for a bit. And there it was. I found my phone nuzzled between the wall and the bed, but more than that, I found something hidden underneath. A black metal box with a 4-digit code. I tested the first 4-digit code that came to mind, and voila, it popped open. In it, I found a gun, 6 bullets, a stack of about 40 $100 bills, and a notebook. There was a knock at the door before I could explore a little further. "You finished?" the lady asked. "Sorry," I said. It's gonna be a while." "You staying?" "Would you mind if I did?" "You paying?" "Of course, yeah." "All right then." I sat there for a moment, taking it all in. How could I have known it would be there? And how would I know the code? How could I have been in that room without remembering anything about it? It didn't make sense, but I was holding the proof in my hands. There had to be answers. I paid for a couple of days and locked myself in that room. I gathered all clothes and checked all the corners to make sure there was nothing else hidden in there. It felt strange, like I was following in my own footsteps, but I'd never been there before. I'd woken up in that field like no time had passed. What was I missing? I kept the TV on in the background just to fill the empty space. I checked the phone. There were a couple of outgoing calls, a few of them short, a couple of them a little longer. Some of them were dated from about 10 to 15 days after I was attacked. In the empty space I couldn't account for, those were 30 days of my life that were just gone. But something had happened in between. There were a couple of texts too. Most of them were just people being worried, asking if I was okay. There were a couple of replies sent from this phone, but just a few. They were short, just saying, "I'm fine," but one text stood out. It was from my younger sister. "Why are they saying you're dead?" she wrote. There'd been no response. Dead? I immediately tried to call her, but my phone was disconnected. Either the service was discontinued or I hadn't paid my bills. Either way, I wasn't getting through. I decided to check the notebook. The pages were all dated, starting at about 21 to 22 days after my supposed death. It mentioned waking up in a field of blue sunflowers, disoriented, and looking for help. It mentioned getting a ride to town from an old man in a blue van. Other entries mentioned talking to people about my assailant, only to find out he'd already died. It seems that my first instinct was always to find the guy who killed me, and always finding out that he was gone. These notes spoke about an experience that was almost identical to mine. About waking up, about getting to a motel, about looking up the house of our attacker. Apparently, that's where they'd found the gun and the money. Maybe it hadn't been kids messing up the place. Maybe it was me. The notes also mentioned a letter left behind. It just said that he was sorry. The note read. There were more notes, dates, connections, so I flipped to an empty page, grabbed a pen, and tried to put it all into a coherent timeline. It seems that after about 10 days after getting shot in the head, I'd woken up in a field for the first time. I tried to find the man who did it, but he had already died more than a week prior. According to the notebook, the man had died either the same night that I did or the day after. Then on day 20, I'd woken up in a field. Again. I'd made my way back to town to find the man who killed me, but he was already dead. For the next few days, I'd been locked up in this very motel, trying to figure out what was going on. I'd made numerous calls, sent texts, and a couple of emails, only to be told that I'd been declared dead. Apparently, I'd walked into the police station on day 19 and fell over. Dead. Complete organ failure, according to the coroner. The notes warned me about contacting friends and family, telling me I'd just cause harm and confusion. For all they knew, I was gone. Talking to them would open up a lot of questions that I couldn't answer. But I wasn't dead. I was right there reading that notebook. From all I could gather, there seemed to be a pattern. Every 10 days, I would wake up in that field as if nothing had happened. I would believe I'd just gotten killed by that man, and I'd seek to either get help or revenge. But he was already dead. The world had moved on. But the notes didn't speak of me having seen any other versions of myself. So what exactly happened to every version? Did they all drop dead? The final entry hinted at an answer. It simply read, "I can feel my heart slowing down. I haven't been able to relax for over a week, and now it's getting hard to move. I have to pry my fingers open with my teeth. My toes have turned black. I'm seeing things. I see the one before me. I see you reading this. I know what is about to, and to prove it, I will put a cross on that spot. It'll be the first thing you will see. The cross. The old man hadn't been the one to put that up. I had. This was the working theory. Every 10 days, I would wake up in that field, and every 9 or 10 days after that, I'd die, only for a new me to wake up, repeating the cycle. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I turned everything in that notebook in and out, looking for answers. There were a couple of notes about checking the library, talking to people about local legends, mentions of those strange sunflowers, but there were no real answers. It was all dead ends and vague nonsense. I didn't know what to do. The first version of me had fumbled around, confused and scared, and died. The second version had tried to figure things out but was still gone. What the hell could I do that those two didn't? And did this mean I was going to die in about a week? Every idea that I had was in that notebook. It was already there, and it had failed. I checked the soil in that glade. I talked to the locals. I'd researched similar myths and legends. I tried burning myself in that soil again, as if I could go back somehow. But no, I'd been killed and buried among those flowers, and they refused to stop bringing me back. And it did so about every 10 days. I wasted that entire day trying to piece it all together. I fell asleep somewhere about 9 in the evening, still holding that notebook. I kept falling in and out of sleep, having these uneasy thoughts. I kept imagining that first breath as I breached the surface, digging myself out of a shallow grave. The confusion, the ringing in my ears from that gunshot. But there were other things in that dark of my dreams. The sound of my feet rushing into that house, desperately digging through a home only to find a gun and a letter, scaring off a few kids, making them drop their spray cans as they fled. Then there was the sound of people crying and screaming in my ear. Questions I can't answer. Desperation on all ends. Building into this tight knot in my chest that no comforting word could untangle. Then a lake. Aching joints. A final swim as my bones fossilized and decayed. I was at peace, knowing I was about to go. And I chose to do it in a way where no one would be bothered. And now me, here, alone in a motel, trying not to hear the ticking clock, trying not to think of what happens when my 10 days were up. The next day, I sprang into action. I washed the cold sweat off my brow and decided to answer what questions remained in that notebook. I would do anything. There had to be a solution. Things always work out, one way or another. Checking recently used apps, I found out that my previous iteration, the second copy, had used a map. They'd searched for nearby lakes. There was that one lake called Frog Lake nearby, and they just walked into it. That must have been the way they chose to end things. Out of sight, out of mind. But the biggest question remained. Why had that old man killed me to begin with? I fell into a vicious cycle of anxiety, desperation, and failure. I tried to find his car, but it'd been destroyed. I tried to find any of his relatives, but he had none. All who had posted had been acquaintances and friends he'd made. I messaged a couple of them using the motel Wi-Fi, but they either didn't respond or had nothing to say. I tried to check for prior convictions, and he had none. I tried to find out something about his gun, but it was unregistered, and the serial number had been filed off. I couldn't even find out where he got the bullets, and why had he apologized? Why leave me money? The only thing I could think of were those duffel bags of his, and his digging. There had to be a reason. The nights were getting worse. I was seeing little glimpses of things that had been. Crying in the motel room, rushing into the police station, tearing out notes from the notebook and clawing at my face until it bled. Frustration, hopelessness, and desperation. And with every glimpse, every dream, I started to realize how futile this was. Every idea, every thought, everything I tried, I'd already done it. I was just repeating patterns. I was in a race against myself, and nothing would change. On day 5, I made my way back out to that glade. Retracing my steps, I found that it was surprisingly close to where he had parked his car that night. Most of the ground there was gravel or rock, but the soil in that glade was soft and malleable. To me, the only thing that made sense was that he'd been digging for something up there. The cross was still up there. I couldn't stop looking at it. What had I thought as I put that up? did I still have hope? That night, I started seeing other things. Not just things that had been, but things that were to come. Years from now, waking in that same glade, the cross long since withered by age, a little bag left by the side, a welcome package. The sunflowers would still be there. The cars would look different, quieter, cleaner. Over time, the roads would deteriorate. The sun would be warmer. I'd draw thousands upon thousands of the same first breath over and over. I'd ask myself the same questions. I'd try the same things, and I'd come to the same conclusions. I forced myself awake before I went too far. I didn't want to see. I didn't want to know. The clock was ticking. On day 6, I had completely given up. I just lay there in the motel room, watching daytime TV, eating stale chips from the supermarket across the street. I juggled 10-minute naps with bouts of existential panic, feeling my heart race through my chest as my lungs tightened. I could hear it in the back of my mind, that ticking clock. It was almost over, forever. I tore my hair out. I crawled into a fetal position, laying in the shower until the water turned cold. But whenever I closed my eyes a little too long, I'd hear myself drawing that first breath again and again, coming to that same horrifying realization. And before I knew it, it'd be over. And it'd be over and over and over. And I'd never really know what had happened until it was too late. By the night of day 6, I might as well have been dead. I just laid there, naked, on the floor, disassociating. I don't want to talk about day 7. It got worse, and I did a lot of things I wasn't proud of. So I'm skipping ahead to day 8. On day 8, I took a walk downtown. There was a corner pub where I decided to have lunch. By happenstance, 2 police officers walked in. They were having a discussion, and I couldn't help but overhear it. "That doesn't make any sense," one of them said. "How can the guy have his own bones in the duffel bag?" "That's the thing," the owner said. "He must have had a twin. They were identical." "So all these years, they've just been 2 of them? And no one knew?" "It's like some Parent Trap shit," the officer laughed. "Can you imagine? Bones, duffel bag. There was something there. They had to be talking about him." I hurried back to the motel. My killer had been digging the night he killed me. He'd left his gun and bullets in a box, telling me he was sorry, along with some money. They'd found bones in his duffel bag that were identical to his own. But what if they weren't an identical twin? What if they were a copy of him? Or maybe he was the copy. I bought a shovel of my own and made my way to that glade that same day. Checking the soil where I'd been buried, I dug and I dug deep. Maybe there was a reason I'd been buried in a shallow grave. Maybe there was something else further down. I dug until my muscles ached and my lungs burned. I dug all afternoon, in different places, and finally, I found something. About 5 foot deep, there was a body bag. It was covered in chemicals, but the smell was unmistakable. There was a corpse in there. I knew what I'd seen before I even opened it. The zipper struggled, but it rolled open, challenging every sensation in my body. It's a strange feeling to hold your own face, to see your own closed eyes, to stroke your own hair in comfort, the little quirks and scars that only you know of, except for that one thing: a bullet hole. I collapsed to my knees. I'd figured it out. From a stray thought mentioned by a passerby, I figured it out. There was a reason that man had such a bare bones home. Why he looked 50, although he was 70. He'd gone through this. He'd been in the cycle before me, killing me and having me take his place in the ground. Must have broken the cycle. There was an end to it. That's why he apologized. That's the reason he just killed a random person by the side of the road. It wouldn't end until someone took his place. If not me, then someone else. So that meant that I had two options. I could go through this nightmare over and over, or I could end it. I could cut those who would come after me out of the equation and spare them the horror I'd felt. I could do that. Now I had options. That night, after I'd washed the dirt from my hands and knees, the dreams were different. I felt myself drawing another first breath, only to wake up under a starless sky, where the sun had gone dim and the moon hung closer than ever. I could hear rumbling earth as towering, monolithic beings reached for the horizon sky. I'd see vaguely humanoid shapes roam a desert wasteland, stretching towards the heavens, crying for death, crying for an end to the cycle, like me. But there would be more first breaths, ones where I would wake up in a firestorm only to be burned to death, ones where I would wake up choking under solid ice, ones where I would be pulled up by an inhuman scavengers only to be torn apart and eaten, farmed and cultivated like wheat. And the cycle would continue, turning life into a grotesque broken mirror image of what I've been told it would be. Lies and hopes made manifest by church, states, and peers. This was real life. Uncompromising, uncaring, raw. And then there'd be no air. Then there'd be no soil. There'd be black. An impossible cold would snap across my crystallizing skin. My eyes would be open, but there would be nothing to see. No sound to hear but the popping of my own eardrums. I'd failed to draw that first breath of air once every 10 days. Again and again and again. I woke up screaming on the 9th day. I had no choice. I had to break the cycle. Someone had to take my place in that void. I could see why he'd done it, and I would do so myself without hesitation. I grabbed the gun, the bullets, the shovel, and made my way to the glade. While the old man had just been bones, I had a whole body to take care of. It didn't matter. I could leave it out in the open and it would make no difference. By the time it mattered, I'd be gone, and the cycle would be broken. So I waited by the side of the road, like he'd done. My body had been dug up and was ready to be moved. I didn't want to do it in the daylight though, but time was running out. I didn't even care that I was going away. I just had to avoid that thing that were to come, the infinite awakenings that followed. A lot of cars passed by me. Some honked at me. Others went out of their way to splash me with water collected in the many potholes. It wasn't until dinner time that a car slowed down to help. A good Samaritan. A pickup truck. Mary Ann. No. I muttered under my breath. Just keep going. Not you. But it was getting late. Could I risk waiting for someone else? She rolled down the window on the passenger side, smiling at me. Her radio clicked off. You back here? She laughed. What kind of trouble are you looking for? I'm fine, I said. You can keep going. Fine? She scoffed. You're right back where you started. Don't tell me you got robbed again. Not this time, no. So why are you here? I had my hand on my gun. There was no one else around. She was leaning forward, and I had a clear shot to her head. I just raised my hand, click, and that'd be it. It was simple. Would I risk missing this chance just for her to get some more time? In the grand scheme of things, what would it matter? And what if the next copy of me came to the same conclusion? What would stop them from pulling the trigger? It was either me now or me later. And if not her, then someone else. Did it matter who? I wouldn't be around to care. I could barely keep it together. My hand trembled. She leaned over, looking out the passenger side window. Her brow furrowed a little. I could tell she was concerned. Look, she said, I won't pretend to know your business, but I can see you're not doing well. You must have come across something real bad, friend," she continued. "I get it, but you know what I do when I feel bad?" She patted the passenger side of her pickup. "I do something nice. It does all the difference in the world. If you can't help yourself, then maybe you can help someone else. Does the heart good, you know?" A thought crossed my mind. I hadn't figured this puzzle out if it hadn't been for me just sticking around. It wasn't being smart or strong or suave. It was a stray bit of luck, presented by two cops having a conversation. So maybe it didn't matter if I couldn't see a solution here and now. There could be a solution elsewhere, at another time, that I just hadn't seen yet. And maybe I wouldn't see it, but maybe the next me would. Also, by knowing what was to come, who was to say I couldn't stop it? This outcome couldn't be completely predetermined, or else I'd have told myself about it in that notebook. I had to believe there could be a better way, that there could be a solution, and a beautiful ending. Not just for me, but for everyone. I took my hand off the gun. "I just gotta get something," I said. "Can you give me a couple minutes?" "Sure," she smiled. "Don't keep me waiting." I rushed back to the glade and nailed a note to the cross. The next me would get a welcome package. I followed Marianne back to town, but she offered to have me stay in her son's room again. I couldn't decline. I borrowed his computer, and that's why I'm here, writing this down. I need to spell things out in a way another me will understand, and I think this is the way to do it. So, if I'm reading this, hello. I'm glad you saw the note. I hope this sheds some light on things, and maybe you can make it better for the next one. My joints are growing stiffer, and my heart is slowing down. It's actually sort of pleasant. The worries start to fade, but the cycle will continue. I'll be gone before long, and I'll make sure Marianne won't find me. I've called the motel, telling them I'll be back soon, and to keep the room. I have the money for it, at least for a while longer. It is so easy to despair, and so easy to forget our view. We can only see so far, and we can only hear so much. What feels like an endless darkness today can be a warming light by the morning. Sometimes, all we have to do is hope, to hold on, to do the best we can, and trust in the way things unfold. We don't even have to be smart about it or strong. Sometimes, we just got to be at the right place at the right time. I don't know how many hours I have left. It's strange to count yourself in hours. It's nice not to know for sure. I'm going to go for a walk and see how far I'll go. Take a deep breath, as if it's your first. You have all the time in the world. I cross-referenced the missing persons map with my local caves. I wish I hadn't. Written by JIZZ Blossoms. You've probably seen this map too. It pops up on Reddit every few months, usually on r/creepy or r/maps. It shows two images. One is a map of missing persons, and the other is a map of America's subterranean cave systems. The overlap is practically identical. The caverns match the disappearances almost 1-to-1. Most people look at it and go, huh, creepy, and scroll past. I used to too, but this time I zoomed in. I live in a rural stretch of Kentucky, deep in the foothills. I noticed a dense cluster of red dots right in my county, sitting directly on top of a minor cave system called the Blackwood Sinkholes. It wasn't a tourist trap like Mammoth Cave. It was a jagged scar in the woods that even the locals didn't bother with. I showed it to my girlfriend, Jess. Calling Jess outdoorsy would be putting it lightly. She's the kind of girl who owns 3 different types of hiking boots and thinks a weekend without dirt under her fingernails is a wasted one. I'm the opposite. I stay up until 3 a.m. reading about unsolved murders and just generally being a vampire. It's a match, see? I pointed at the screen. Nobody goes missing here because they get lost. They fall in, or I waggled my eyebrows. Something pulls them in. Jess rolled her eyes but grinned. You want to go ghost hunting? I want to go debunking, I corrected. We hike out, set up a camp near the sinkholes, cook some actual food and drink some bourbon, and see if the Mothman shows up. It was supposed to be fun, a mix of her love for nature and my morbid curiosity. We packed the Jeep on Friday. Tents, sleeping bags, and a heavy cooler filled with marinated short ribs and ice for the whiskey. The hike to the Blackwood Sinks was only about 3 miles from the nearest logging road, but the terrain was brutal. The trees grew thick and wrong here, their roots twisting over the limestone ground like arthric fingers. By the time we found the main entrance, I was ready to drop dead. The cave mouth was a horizontal slash in a limestone cliff face, about 10 feet high and 30 feet wide. It looked like a mouth held open in a silent scream. A steady, cold breeze flowed out of it, smelling of wet rock and old copper. Creepy, Jess noted, dropping her pack. I can dig it. I love this girl. We set up camp about 50 yards from the entrance, just far enough to avoid the drafts, but close enough to stare into the darkness. I got the fire going while Jess prepped the grill grate over the coals. We were doing this right. Slow-cooked sticky ribs slathered in a spicy bourbon sauce. Heat from gentle coals licked at the meat, and the smell was intoxicating. Anyone who loves barbecue knows what I'm talking about. Smoke, fat, sugar, and char. Jess was walking back from the tent with the drinks when a downdraft caught the smoke, pulling the plume low across the ground and sucking it into the mouth of the cave. Feeding the beast? Jess joked while handing me a solo cup half filled with Knob Creek. Hope they like ribs, I laughed. We ate as the sunset turned to twilight, and then drank as twilight gave way to pitch black. Jess put her hand on my shoulder. I thought I was going to get lucky, but then she told me to shush. That's when I heard the silence. All day there was a symphony of crickets, cicadas, and rustling leaves, but now the silence was thick, heavy, and oppressive. It felt like the forest was holding its breath. And then the cave moaned. At first, you could probably mistake it for the wind. It was too low and too long for a groan to come from any human lungs. Then it got louder and closer. Jess whispered low, "Did you hear that?" And it took me everything I had to not tremble. She showed her flashlight toward a cliff. The beam cut through the darkness, but the cave mouth swallowed the light. Probably a coyote or a bear. We should pack up the food tight, I murmured back, more to myself than her. That didn't sound like a bear. That sounded congested. We started scrambling to clean up. I was tossing the bones in the trash bag when the sound changed. It wasn't moaning now. It was a retching noise, a wet, hacking cough that echoed from deep within the rock. Then a voice, or something trying to be a voice. Come. Maybe it wasn't English. Maybe my mind was trying to find meaning where there wasn't any. Jess dropped the cooler lid. What the hell was that? I grabbed the hatchet I'd used for firewood. We're leaving. Now. The tent, leave it. The smell hit us before we saw them. It wasn't the lingering sweet smoke of our barbecue anymore. It was a wave of rot, rancid meat, ammonia, and something muskier, like a wet dog that had been dead for days. From the darkness of the cave, they came. They weren't human. They were wrong, elongated. That's the only word for it. They looked like humans who had been stretched on a rack. Pale skin pulled tight over bones, that had too many joints. Their eyes were milky white, useless and blind, long, rot-stained teeth, chipped and broken and jagged, stuck out from low-hanging jaws that were too wide and too loose. And there were 3 of them. 2 have crawled on the ground, and the third one limped in a jerky motion, all like an insect. They went straight for the grill. One of them grabbed the scorching hot grate with a bare, clawed hand. It didn't even flinch as its skin sizzled. It brought the metal to its face and groaned, licking the grease with a tongue that was too long and too black. "Don't move," I whispered, terrified that the sound of my heartbeat would give us away. The creature let out a chittering sound, dropping the grate. It turned its head. It wasn't looking at us. It was blind, I could tell, but it was looking for us. It tilted its head, sniffing the air like a hungry dog. It was smelling for us. And then it arched its back and wailed. It was a nails on chalkboard, teeth grinding, bone-chilling screech that shot at my ears and prickled at something in my gut. It opened its too wide mouth and I saw my death. "Meat," it rasped. I threw the bag at him. It was instinct. The bag hit the screecher in the chest, spilling rib bones and paper towels. The distraction worked for a second. The 3 of them fell upon the ribs and garbage in a frenzy. I could hear them snapping the bones with audible crunches. "Run," I screamed. We sprinted through the dark woods. We tripped over roots, slammed into saplings, and tore our clothes on briars. Behind us, the snapping of bones stopped, replaced by a high-pitched, mutilating shriek that sounded like something between a coyote and a sobbing child. I could hear them crashing through the brush behind us. They were fast, so incredibly fast. We burst onto the logging road just as I threw the keys to Jess. We dove into the Jeep. She slammed the locks just as something heavy slammed into the rear window. The glass spiderwebbed but held. I looked back as Jess peeled out, dirt and gravel spraying everywhere. In the red glow of the taillights, I saw them. The tree line was filled with them. Some were standing in the middle of the road, dead still, just watching. There were so many. We drove in silence until we hit the highway. We didn't report it. Who'd believe us? We told our friends we got spooked by a cougar. But I went back to that map today. I looked at that cluster of red dots in my county, and I looked at the timeline. Most of the disappearances happened in the summer. Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, holidays. Holidays where people go outside, where people light fires, where people cook meat. I thought the maps overlap because people fall into holes. It's not. I thought these sinks were just holes in the ground. They aren't. They're ventilation shafts. And when we play and laugh and cook barbecue, we're ringing the dinner bell. I was a law enforcement ranger for a secret national park. This is what I can tell you about its unique wildlife. Written by Box Goblin on Reddit, and check out the author's Substack, linked in the description. When the current administration started cutting National Park Service jobs, my old post at the Everglades abruptly ended. They sacked almost everyone, leaving us with barely enough severance to cover the next month. I was surprised. I was pissed. I was devastated. But my supervisor had already lined up another gig, and he was able to bring one more LE, law enforcement, ranger with him. A week after my dismissal, he called and asked if I wanted to go out for a cup of joe. You've always been there for me, no matter the situation, Bruce said over a steaming mug of black coffee. My supervisor was a bear of a man, bushy beard, 6'5", 240 pounds, built like a lumberjack. I trusted him like a brother. There's nothing more important in this line of work than loyalty. And out of all the rangers at that godforsaken swamp, you were the most devoted. Thank you, I said, unsure of where this was going. Sensing my impatience, Bruce launched into his offer. Look, I've got some friends in the BLM. There's this wildlife preserve. It's contract work, 6 months, but there's an opportunity for extension. Are you? Yes, I am, Bruce said. You good to move to Northern California? I didn't have anything tying me to South Florida at the time, but the distance caught me off guard. This was clear across the country, and I wanted to know where I'd be spending the better half of the year. Is it Golden Gate? Visions of the majestic San Francisco Bay flashed before my eyes. The location's classified, Bruce said. It's not a park with visitors. Oh, that sounded ominous. Is it military? Look, all I can tell you right now is it's easy work. The easiest job you've ever had. Oh, and the pay is triple what you made in the Glades. Yeah, that sounds great, I said. It's probably in the Bay Area, I thought. The cost of living there is much higher. Bruce slid a nondescript manila folder across the table. I reached out to open it, but he kept his meaty hand flat atop its cover. There's just one thing I need to know before we go any further. I leaned back, suddenly aware of how quiet the coffee shop had grown. Is this some kind of drug thing? I whispered. I knew about a lot of marijuana grow operations in NorCal. Bruce fixed me with a steely gaze. Crystal, he said. I spit up my cappuccino. Whoa, I don't know. But Bruce erupted into a rumbling laugh that was part growl. Nah, I'm just fucking with you, dude. The site's restricted due to environmental concerns, and you just have to sign an NDA before I tell you anything else. Oh. I let out a sigh and opened the folder to an 80-page document of boilerplate legalese. My new post was a wildlife preserve called McNeely Pines. I arrived a few days after signing my NDA. I flew out to Sacramento, then drove for a few hours through winding mountainous roads with nary a town or gas station in sight. I left all traces of civilization far behind and entered the pure, untrammeled wilderness that westward settlers centuries ago came across. The sun had just set when I finally arrived at the ranger station. It was an old, timber-built hunting lodge, repurposed by the government, 2 stories tall, with a series of radio antennas sprouting from its roof. There was something off about the place, but it took me a while to realize that. It wasn't until after I'd moved into my room upstairs, taken a nice hot shower, and settled into bed that I noticed all the windows were reinforced with metal bars. Bruce gave me a tour of the property the next day. It was just the two of us working the park. Cell reception was spotty, but we had a high-tech comms room in the station for communicating with the outside world if needed. The preserve encompassed 10,000 acres of mountainous forest full of towering pines whose expansive canopies blocked out most sunlight, even in the middle of the day. The forest looked pristine. No trash, no roads, plenty of wildlife, but it was inaccessible. A 15-foot tall chain link fence topped with razor wire surrounded the whole area. No one was allowed inside except with express permission from the federal government. Before my arrival, Bruce said the location of the preserve had been quarantined, but I never imagined it would have been like this. What'd they have in there? Mutant grizzly bears? I asked as the two of us drove along the perimeter in a park-issued ATV. Deer mostly, Bruce said. It's not just to keep the animals in, but also keeps the people out. Now that I was on the site, my supervisor could explain the whole situation. Apparently, a railway runs through the McNeely Forest Wildlife Preserve. It's shut down now, but for decades, it serviced freight trains. Most carried simple goods, foodstuffs, lumber, sheet metal, but occasionally they transported hazardous materials. One such train was carrying over 200 tons of toxic chemicals, including vinyl chloride, ethanol glycol, ethical alkylate, and butyl oxyrite. When it derailed in the middle of the forest 5 years ago, the resulting spill covered much of the land. Fortunately, there was no civilization nearby, so the story didn't garner much news outside of a few small articles in local newspapers. After the initial cleanup operation, the EPA ordered a quarantine of the whole forest for at least 20 years, subject to further restrictions if testing didn't improve. Our job is making sure no one except the EPA enters or leaves the forest, Bruce said. The fencing had one gate, located next to the ranger station. Bruce and I were the only ones with the code to open it. Bruce was right. The job was easy. Outside of handling the main gate, I managed a series of trail cameras placed every 100 meters or so along the perimeter fence. The cameras faced both inside and outside the preserve. If I caught anyone trying to break through the fence, I was to arrest them on sight. That was it. The government covered lodging and delivered free groceries every other week, so I was raking in pure profit for almost no work. It was perfect. Still, it left me with a lot of questions. Why did we need so many trail cams? There were literally hundreds watching every inch of the park. I'd never seen so many before, even at larger parks. And this was on top of the daily patrols Bruce and I made in the park ATVs. Furthermore, when I first checked the cameras, I noticed the fencing had odd markings. Nothing major, just this faint script. You could only see it when you're right up against the fence. There were these little scribbles etched into the metal chain links. It looked like some kind of writing, but I couldn't make out any of it. I asked Bruce about it one night. He said the etchings were a company signature. The Park Service hired a special company to make the fence extra strong and resilient against the elements, anti-rust and whatnot. Jesus, they've spent a fortune on this quarantine operation, I thought. Each evening, I'd upload all the footage from the trail cams and review it for any anomalies. The cameras only captured images if there was movement in the frame, so most of it showed branches swaying in the wind or a squirrel running by the lens. Occasionally, a deer or raccoon would approach the fence from within the quarantine zone. The preserve had a surprising amount of wildlife given its toxic backstory, though the animals never appeared to look or act abnormal. With all the hazardous shit in there, it's a miracle anything's alive, I told Bruce one night as we drank whiskey and watched old episodes of Everybody Loves Raymond. The lodge didn't have internet access, but it came with an expansive collection of DVDs. I don't know. Life's pretty resilient, I guess, he said. No matter what the world puts it through. What we put it through, I said, referring to the toxic spill. Bruce nodded. Still, have to put them down if you manage to break through the fencing. Yeah, I said. I didn't relish the thought of shooting mutant deer. The first couple of months were monotonous. Checking trail cams, maintaining the ATVs, watching too many episodes of Friends, and every so often letting EPA officials through the main gate. Each week, 2 black SUVs would arrive at the station, and a half dozen men and women in pristine white hazmat suits would pile out, carrying nondescript equipment boxes. They weren't much for conversation, just running more tests, one of them said. It was the longest sentence any of them had ever spoke to me. I'd input my gate code, and the group would disappear into the seemingly endless forest, sometimes for 30 minutes, sometimes a whole day. Neither Bruce nor I ever accompanied them. What if they need protection, I asked him, thinking about potential animal attacks. They can handle themselves, Bruce replied. The hazmats are enough. I suddenly became aware that neither of us had worn so much as a face mask while patrolling the forest for hours each day. And here were these people in full bodysuits. Should we be wearing anything? Nah, the spill sites far, far in the interior, Bruce said. We're well outside the range of anything dangerous. That's what they tell us, at least, I said, chuckling. Yeah, true. Bruce laughed. What do you think they do in there for so long? I don't know. Soil samples, a bonfire rager? Who cares so long as our check's clear, Bruce said. I nodded, but something still felt off. The EPA officials were so deadly serious whenever they arrived, and they always seemed dazed when they returned from their testing. It was like they'd been through the ringer in there. Their blank, expressionless faces reminded me of someone in shock. One day, I noticed a syrupy red liquid leaking from one of their equipment boxes as they exited. I almost asked what it was, but the officials quickly scrambled back into their SUVs and waved goodbye before driving off. It has to be blood, I told Bruce later that night. There's nothing else it could be. Are they killing animals in there and bringing them back to some lab for testing? Look, Bruce set his whiskey down. It's best if you don't dwell on it so much. His demeanor suddenly changed, as if I were bringing up a taboo subject, but this was our job. Don't you want to know what's going on, I asked. I mean, the cleanup's the whole point of this place. Quarantine. Clean up the mess. Reopen the park to the public. I never said the park would be reopened to the public, Bruce said. What? My supervisor just stared at the flames in the lodge's fireplace. The logs popped and crackled. Then he downed the rest of his whiskey and started up the stairs. I'm going to bed. Make sure you put the fire out before heading up. I'd known Bruce for years, but I'd never seen him like this. Everything was hunky-dory for weeks. We were cracking jokes about toxic deer with superpowers, but the moment I brought up the blood-soaked equipment container, it was like I touched a raw nerve. He became standoffish, even a bit sad. At first, I thought my hypothesis was correct, and he was angry about the EPA killing animals for testing, but Bruce was never much of an animal lover. Hell, he ate beef almost every day, so he couldn't be that upset. It had to be something else. Something he wasn't telling me. Wouldn't tell me. Or maybe I was overthinking things. There's only so much to occupy your mind in the middle of nowhere. Only so many old TV episodes to watch. So many dusty books on wilderness exploration to read. My job was monotonous. Repetitive. In such situations, the mind tends to search for meaning. Especially when there's a mystery this intriguing. I started my investigation in the comms room. As I mentioned earlier, a big part of my job was reviewing trail camera footage, which I uploaded to a bulky government-issued desktop computer. I was only supposed to review the previous day's footage, but after some digging, I found a folder containing the trail cam archives. There was footage going back to the establishment of the quarantine zone, years before I had arrived. I started with the earliest images. There were no signs of a train crash or fire, but some of the nighttime footage showed human figures staggering out of the forest. They appeared bruised and bloodied, walking in a daze. There were only a couple of them at first, but that number soon expanded to 6, then a dozen, then dozens. What are you doing? I minimized the screen and spun around in my office chair. Bruce had just entered the comms room. Were you reviewing footage from last night? It's 6:30. Time for evening rounds, Bruce said. Oh, yeah, right. I closed out of everything and logged off the computer. Bruce stared at me as I left the room. He knows something's up, I thought. He'll see that I accessed those early files. I wanted to say something, but I figured I'd ask Bruce about the footage later that night after he'd had his nightly whiskeys. Maybe that would finally get him talking. When I entered the garage to get the ATV, I noticed a massive pair of bolt cutters hanging from a tool shelf nearby. Bruce said they were for EPA emergencies only, such as if the gate wouldn't open and we needed to cut an exit for the hazmats. I'd never taken the cutters with me on patrol before. What would be the point? I wasn't going to rescue some mutant deer dying from toxic shock, but that night, I don't know what it was, but something compelled me to grab the tools before heading out. They were heavy, much heavier than normal bolt cutters. I noticed they bore the same odd scribbles as the chain link fence. After grabbing the cutters, I hopped in the ATV. My patrol was to drive the entire park perimeter and check for anything suspicious. There was a service road that ran alongside all 14 miles of fencing. I flipped on the ATV's headlamps. The sun was about to set, and the whole forest was covered in a thick blue gloom. Not quite daylight, not quite night, a half light. I drove along the service road at 10 miles per hour, scanning the area as I went. The air felt thick. The forest sounds were muffled, almost as if everything was underwater. It was an eerie atmosphere, unlike anything I'd ever felt since arriving at McNeely Pines. I soon found out why. Halfway through my patrol, I heard a voice call out, "Help!" I stopped the ATV, shining a spotlight around the service road. "Hello? Who's there? Help, please!" The voice was coming from within the fence. I turned my spotlight to reveal a gaunt figure amid the tall pines. It was a man, mid-40s, skeletal. Ragged clothes barely clung to his emaciated frame. He looked shocked and confused as he staggered towards the fence. "Help me!" "My God," I whispered. I got out of the ATV, my hand on the holster of my taser gun. The man looked like a crystal addict I'd encountered in the Everglades once. Unpredictable and much stronger than normal. "How'd you get in there? This forest is restricted." "They're keeping us," the man said. His skin was so sallow and pale, it almost glowed. "We can't leave. They're horrible. Oh God, they're horrible." "Who's keeping you?" "The demons," the man said. Drool spilled from his lips. "Demons everywhere." "Stay right there," I said. "I'm going to get you help." I returned to the ATV and clicked on my shoulder-mounted radio. "Bruce, come in. I'm at mile marker 12. There's a man inside the fence. Says he's being held prisoner. Looks like he might be on something." "Keep him there, but don't engage," Bruce said. "Don't talk to him. Don't even look at him. I'm coming to assist." "Copy that." "Who's that? Who are you talking to? Don't let him come here." The man had walked up to the fence, almost close enough to touch it. "Sir, it's going to be okay," I said. "What's your name?" "They don't give us names," the man said. "Only numbers." "Okay. Look, just remain calm, okay? Help is on the way." "No, that man won't help. He'll kill us." I sighed. There was no use arguing with this madman. He's probably some druggy backpacker who wandered a bit too far off the trail and somehow climbed over or dug his way under the fence. Hopefully, he didn't have any exposure to toxic chemicals. I made sure to keep my distance. "We're not supposed to leave the facility or the demons will punish us," the man said. "The demons in white." "Uh-huh," I said, staring at my phone. The ranger station was roughly 6 miles away. It would take Bruce less than half an hour to arrive after he started up his ATV. "Please, sir, you have a kind face," the man said. "I know you'll help us. What's your name?" "Us?" I looked up to see 2 more emaciated people standing beside the gaunt man. One was a woman in her early 20s, and the other was a scared little girl, no more than 6 years old. "Help us, please," she cried. Tears stained her cheeks. With all 3 of them there, I realized they were all wearing similar outfits. Plain beige shirts with matching beige slacks. They didn't even have shoes, only cheap flip-flops, like the kind you'd wear to a public shower. "Jesus Christ," I said. This was not just some random tweaker. This was something more serious. "Where did you all come from?" "From the facility," the woman said. "What facility?" "We just want to go home." It was a little girl. "Please, sir." She held out her tiny arm. A small, homemade bracelet hung from her bony wrist. Just a piece of string with a few buttons as ornaments. "Are you all together?" "We're a family," the gaunt man said, pulling the woman and child close. This was insane. I radioed Bruce again. Bruce, I've got a whole family here. There's a woman and a kid. Just don't engage in them in any way, Bruce said. I'll be there as soon as I can. He sounded out of breath. I heard a faint buzzing sound. Was that the ATV engine? Bruce, you still there? The radio only crackled in response. Forget it. He's not going to help us. The woman tugged on the man's shirt, pulling him away from the fence. No, I can see the empathy in his face. The man fought to remain where he was. He kept staring at me. I could feel his bloodshot eyes boring into me even as I looked down at my cell phone. It was 8:15 p.m. What was taking Bruce so long? A sudden gurgling sound drew my attention. Then a woman's scream. I looked up. The little girl had collapsed onto the leafy ground, seizing. Her eyes rolled back as she struggled to breathe. No, she's going into anaphylactic shock. The woman grabbed a stick from the ground and shoved it into the girl's mouth. Drool spilled from her lips. She's gonna die. The man looked at me, pleading. Do you have a first aid kit? I did. A part of me wanted to radio Bruce one more time, but the girl's condition was getting worse by the second. Her tiny body racked with violent convulsions. I need to act. Now. I rushed into the backseat of the ATV, grabbing the first aid kit and bolt cutters. Seconds later, I knelt beside the fencing and started to cut. Snip, snip, snip. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Snip. I cut the last chain link and a large section of the fence fell away. As soon as it did, an incredible whoosh of air radiated outward. It was a shockwave that knocked me flat on my ass. My head spun. My consciousness flickered like a static TV signal. But in those fleeting moments of lucidity, I saw the family rush through the opening. We're forever in your debt, the man said before he and his family disappeared into the gloomy woods beyond. I vaguely remember more figures running through the exit afterward. A throng of pale, long-limbed bodies with scythe-like fingers. Then everything went dark. I woke in the dirt late the following morning. My mouth was dry, and my head was groggy. What? I was still lying beside the fence, which now had a gaping hole. The section I'd cut open was pushed outward as if something massive had squeezed through the gap. I got up. My ATV was still there, but it was dead. The battery juice ran out from running the headlamps all night, and all the gas had burned away. I clicked my shoulder-mounted radio. Bruce? Come in. Bruce? There was no response. Where the hell is he? I ended up walking back to the ranger station. I kept radioing my supervisor every few minutes, but only received errant static in response. I knew something had gone terribly wrong, and my decision to cut open the fence was almost certainly the cause of it. Who were those people asking for my help last night? What was the facility they kept talking about? Were they all on something? Was I on something? Was the whole night some toxic-fueled hallucination brought on by the chemicals in the forest? All I knew for sure was that I'd fucked up, big time. I'll probably lose my job over this, I thought. When I finally arrived back at the lodge, the front door was ajar, and a few of the windows had been broken open. The iron bars covering them were pulled apart. Only someone powerful could do that. Someone or something. There was an awful stench in the air. Flies buzzed everywhere. I pulled out my service revolver and stepped inside. The place was a war zone. Furniture ripped apart, glassware shattered, tables and desks overturned, and blood splattered everywhere. In the center of the room was all that remained of Bruce. His body had been torn apart, limbs severed, chest cavity ripped open. Something had eaten his internal organs while he was still alive. My former supervisor's face was frozen mid-scream. his glassy eyes wide with terror. I staggered backward, bile rising in my throat. This was too much. But it was about to get much, much worse. That's when I saw what Bruce clutched in his cold, dead hands. A blood-stained government report, highly classified. After grabbing some pliers from the tool shed, I pried open his rigor mortis stiffened fingers to access the document. Its contents were somehow more sickening than the carnage that surrounded me. There was no train crash. That was just a cover story to quarantine the area and keep any hunters or tourists out of the woods. The EPA agents I let inside the fence each week were military scientists. They worked at a top-secret research facility deep within McNeely Pines. It didn't even have a name. The report only listed it as the facility. The document had numerous grainy, black and white photos. They showed men, women, and children in barren cells, heads shaved, emaciated, terrified. There were pages of data detailing horrific experiments, tests involving exposure to experimental neurotoxins. The scientists would monitor each person's degradation to learn just how long it took for someone to go blind, for their teeth to fall out, for their heart to stop. I threw the document across the room in disgust. That's when I saw the shredder. A pile of chewed up pages lay beneath it. There must have been dozens of documents all cut to ribbons. More evidence of the facility. After searching the rest of the lodge, I realized that the report I'd thrown across the room, the one Bruce clutched as he died, was the last bit of hard evidence of the facility left. He destroyed everything else. That was the buzzing sound I heard last night. I went over and picked up the bloodstained document, placing it in my satchel. Then I left McNeely Pines for good. I drove all night until I found a cheap roadside motel near Yosemite. Once secured in my room, I pulled out the document and photographed each page, uploading them to my Google Drive in case someone burst through the door right then, shot me dead, and burned the document. I needed to make sure this last bit of evidence would remain. As I finally read through the entire report, I noticed that the military had moved on from chemical weapons to arcane ones. The last pages detailed a program involving an ancient Sumerian tablet. There were images of odd scribbles, the same writing etched on the chain link fencing and bolt cutters. The scientists had performed some sort of blood ritual on one of their subjects, a man in his mid-40s. A grainy black and white photo showed his face. It was the same man who came to me the other night, begging to be let out. The document's last page detailed a procedure where they drained all of this man's blood into a basin made according to ancient specifications. According to the report, a figure rose from the bloody pool an hour later. It was tall and gaunt, and incredibly strong. I'm in that motel room now, debating whether or not to release the full document to the press. It will have to be soon. It won't take long for the government to realize who let their precious assets loose. I wish I could say that I regret what I did. Those things will likely wreak havoc once they find civilization. There will be more casualties, perhaps even innocent ones, but I can't get the images of that frightened family out of my head, pleading for help. No matter what, I know there's still some humanity left inside them. As I drove away from McNeely Pines, I saw one in its true form. 10 feet tall, long-limbed and hairless, with skin like a shark's hide. It smiled at me in recognition, flashing a mouth full of dagger teeth. Then it waved as I drove past. A tiny bracelet hung from its wrist, a string with a few buttons. And all right, guys, that wraps up some creepy Reddit horror stories. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I mean, I loved today's video. I thought all these stories were just amazing. These were honestly some of the most intriguing and best Reddit stories I have ever read. So I hope you enjoyed them as much as I did. And if you did enjoy the video, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on Instagram and follow me on Spotify. It helps more than you know. And if you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you'll enjoy other videos on the channel. So go check out those. And thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. This was a long video, so props to you for sticking around the whole time. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. And this was Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're getting into some deranged confession threads where I get into some of your guys' confessions and some confessions from Reddit. So it's a wild mix. And yeah, like the title says, we're getting into some deranged confessions, and they are sad, they're wild, and they are just, yeah, shocking. So you'll want to stick around. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. And if you'd like to see your confession in a future video, please send it to the email on screen now. Thank you so much. And yeah, this video will be long enough already. So without further ado, let's get into some deranged confession threads. I just shot my dog. My wife found a stray last week that loved our young daughter more than anything. This dog had followed her around from outside the daycare fence, playing with her through the fence for 3 days before my wife decided to see if she could catch him. After much coaxing, he got her into the car and she brought him home. He was a little black and white rat terrier looking mutt. And in true kiddo fashion, our daughter decided that a black and white dog's name is going to be Marshall because Paw Patrol. Well, Marshall and Kiddo are fast friends, chasing each other around, playing nonstop. It was beautiful. Marshall wasn't without fault, though. He was so attached to her that several times he tried to defend our daughter from the other dogs we have, so he didn't quite trust them yet. We even considered getting rid of him after the first day when he jumped our 122-pound shepherd mix for trying to get pets from our daughter. That was truly scary, as she was right in the mix and I yanked her up into the air from between them as they briefly fought it out. Luckily, she was not hurt, but it really had us worried. We decided to stick it out and give Marshall a chance because of how strong he'd bonded with daughter and just how pure their love was. We brought him home a week ago, and he'd made great strides, not fighting with the other dogs besides the occasional growl, and he'd started herding our goats around, really living his best life, and we felt like we could keep working with him and get him to be a part of the family. Tonight, I let him out for a bathroom break, as I looked for an additional in-ground fence collar that the shepherd mix has to keep on him from going out under the gate, but still lets him roam around the whole property without wandering into the neighbor's land and getting into their cows. He was seriously injured doing that when young, and I know in-ground collars aren't well received, but it was better than him almost dying again, and it works great. I'd found the extra collar, got a new battery into it, and was headed outside to test it before putting it on Marshall to make sure he would stick to our property, and I saw him, lying in the tree line at the edge of the front yard by the gate, not moving. I went over to him and saw he had a swollen belly, a severely injured leg that was broken in several places, was not getting up, and I could tell he'd been hit by a car. I'm a first responder, and I knew that the way his leg was bent up and the swelling at his hips meant his pelvis was broken, and the swollen belly was from internal bleeding, and there was zero chance he would survive. I carried him inside, and as I did, I knew he was on borrowed time, as I could feel how his broken hips really were even, though I was carrying him as gently as I could. He didn't even whine. He was so far gone already. I brought him to his bed, laid him down as comfortably as I could, and told the family. We got our daughter and told her that Marshall had a really bad boo-boo that we couldn't fix. She understands what death is a bit more than most 3 years old because of farm life, but it's still very limited. And we told her he was not going to make it. She asked if he was going to die, and we told her that Marshall was going to die. We're religious, so we told her that I had to take him out into the woods so he could be with Jesus, and Jesus would take him away so he wouldn't hurt anymore. She asked a bunch of questions that we answered as best as we could. She hugged and kissed Marshall. She said goodbye to him, and then told me she would be okay. Many tears were shed. So I bundled Marshall up in a towel and brought him to a quiet area in the woods. I laid him down, thanked him for loving my daughter so much and bringing her so much joy this past week. And I apologized to him. I told him I was sorry that he got hurt, that I was sorry that our attempts to make his life better ended the way it had, and I apologized for how much the walk out here must have hurt. His pupils were huge from the shock. His gums were gray and his whole face had gone cold, and his breaths were shallow. As I stepped back, thanked him again, apologized, told him I loved him, and shot him. The pain was gone, and I know I did the right thing for him, especially since the closest emergency vet is an hour or so away, so he would die painfully long before he could be properly euthanized. But it still doesn't feel good. Daughter told us that she would dream about Marshall tonight so he could feel better in her dreams after story time before bed, and that broke us both again. So she consoled us and told us it would be okay because Jesus would always take good care of Marshall now, and that he doesn't live at our house anymore. So we just cuddled up, quietly crying with her, until she went to sleep. This is a huge wall of text, but I gotta get it out there because it sucks and I need it off my chest. It was less than 1 week, Tuesday to Sunday, but dang, he was a part of the family already and was easily our daughter's best friend for that week. We gave Marshall a house, we cleaned his dirty fur, gave him a bed, food, water, and a best friend for 1 week of his lonely life living on the streets. And I keep telling myself that even though it ended abruptly, that 1 week was worth it for him. And it should be worth it for me too. Viewer confession. Hello Snook, before I start, I'd like to thank you. Your videos carry me through work a lot, but carrying on, here is my confession. Sorry if it's long or my grammar is bad. I abused my classmate's dog. When I was a preteen, I used to pick on a kid. For this story, I won't be using his real name, but I'll use something he goes by so that, on the off chance he somehow sees this, he can hear it and hopefully get closure for my actions. So, Didact, if you're seeing this, I truly am sorry. Didact was very introverted, as he didn't speak much because he was self-conscious about his lisp. At the time, I didn't know much about him. I just thought it was funny because he sounded different. I tormented him for so long as the new kid at school solely so I could fit in with the wrong people. Until one day, he finally spoke to me. This was the first time I had ever heard him speak to me directly. He spoke calmly and only said one thing. "Why are you like this?" Then he began to turn his back to me. At the time, it caused an explosion within me. I won't use it as an excuse, but my late mother would always say that to me whenever I acted out, and it made me angry. I tried to sucker punch him while he wasn't facing me. I don't know how he pulled it off, but he ducked without even looking and did some kind of karate-looking kick that I didn't even have time to register before it knocked me out. I was suspended. It didn't take long for me to become the main joke for that semester because not only did I bully a kid, but the kid I bullied knocked me out in less than 10 seconds. I couldn't take it, so I started trying to find some way to hurt him. I knew I clearly couldn't beat him. I found out he fought a lot, mainly because of people like me, so he was naturally quite good at it. So I went for the thing he cherished the most, his dog, Daisy. She was everywhere you saw him outside of school. She was on the wallpaper of every device he owned, and if he was outside, that dog was always with him. I knew how much he loved her. Skipping some details, I found her. She was near my backyard at the time. I have no idea why, but I assume she ran off. I took my grandfather's cane and beat her. I hurt her so badly that I thought I had killed her. I went back inside without even bothering to clean up what I had done, and for some sick reason, I felt fulfilled and happy. I still can't escape the hate I feel for myself for taking joy in hurting a living creature. But she survived. She's still alive to this day. Even so, Didact was devastated. It hurt him so much that he did something unthinkable to someone else. And it's all my fault. My grandfather at the time was known to dislike that dog because she would constantly sneak into his yard. So, if you can guess where this is going, everybody in that neighborhood thought my grandfather did it. It didn't help that the first sight Didact was greeted with when he knocked on the door was my grandfather's discarded, bloody cane lying on the porch. He lost it. He beat my grandfather so badly, it nearly paralyzed him. My grandpa was a good person. He was a veteran, and despite him not liking Daisy, I knew he loved animals almost as much as Didact himself. He would never have hurt a dog. But because of me, his name is still ruined, even after death, because people think he was some cruel old man who beat a little kid's pet nearly to death and faced the consequences. And it's all my fault. I know the destruction I caused won't go away with this confession, but if you're seeing this, Didact, you surely know who I am. You're smart enough to figure it out. I'm sorry from the bottom of my heart. I regret my actions, and I hope you grow into an even better person than you already are. I hope your career in animal rescue succeeds, and I wish Daisy a long and healthy life. I doubt this will be on time, but happy late birthday to your canine best friend. And thank you, Snook. In advance, if you go over this story, I'm not the person I once was, and I hope you and everybody else can forgive me for my cruel actions. I'm now a doctor, and every day I hope my good deeds will outweigh the bad. The reason I didn't confess this earlier is because at the time I was afraid of him, but now that we're both adults, I respect him and everybody else who can see the true value of life. There is no innate hierarchy of value. We are all living beings who just want to live our lives. Harming one, no matter what creature it is an unforgivable act. I just hope others can learn from the lesson I have. And I just have one quick thing to say to you and some feedback to this horrifying confession. Please, that apology you just wrote to me, or that apology you just wrote out, please send that to Didact. You have it written out. You feel sorry. Why are you banking on him seeing this video? Why are you waiting for him to see my video or see this video, and instead of just reaching out to him personally? Please, and even if you guys have each other blocked on social media or whatever, reach out to his girlfriend or wife or mom or dad or brother or sister or friend or whatever. Please reach out to him personally and forgive him. I mean, what you did to him was horrible. There's no downplaying that. You beat his dog nearly to death because he loved his dog, and you bullied him for things he couldn't control. So please, the one thing I have to say is, please reach out to Didact. I mean, I'm sure he's still thinking about this years later. You know, such a horrible situation and a horrible thing you did, no doubt about it. But please just reach out to him and personally apologize. And he doesn't have to forgive you. He doesn't have to forgive you at all. But I think he deserves an apology for what you did for him. And so please, like I said, don't bank on him seeing this video. I mean, the chances of that are very, very low, I have to bet. And so please just reach out to him personally and say, I'm sorry. And tell him exactly what you told me, all of the things you said. And, you know, hopefully he can forgive you. And if he doesn't, oh well. But at least you apologize to him. I don't care that my drug addict sister is homeless and may lose a limb. If that makes me a bad person, so be it. My sister is a drug addict. Me, 29 female, her 30 female. She's never had a legal prescription for opioids. She's never had an injury that would mean she needed them. I haven't spoke to her in almost a decade. My parents are still in contact with her. I'm tired of them enabling my sister and trying to get me to re-establish contact. My parents have informed me that my sister is homeless again and she is close to losing a limb. Maybe I'm a bad person, but I don't care. They told me the drug supply in the US is contaminated and it has now made its way to our province and tainted the supply. There is some kind of tranquilizer in them that makes limbs rot and die. They want to move my sister into their house and say they need my help to pay for rehab again. When she first started using drugs 11 years ago, I gave up my measly savings to help my parents pay for her stay in the rehab. I participated in family therapy. As soon as she got out, she went right back to using drugs again. She told me she would trade my life for drugs. Oh man. After that, I cut off contact. Since then, she's been in rehab again. She's been to prison. She lies and steals. This isn't the first time she's been homeless. I don't even know the number of times she's OD'd. The most insane part of this is that she's been told by multiple doctors she will lose her limb, but she keeps on doing exactly that and doing it. Even the threat of losing a limb isn't enough to stop her from using. I told my parents I don't care, and they are angry. But I also told them to never mention her to me ever again. If it makes me a bad person, so be it. She's dead to me, and I'm sick of my parents enabling her. She is selfish, and I want nothing to do with this. And we didn't get an update for 3 months from the OP. A lot of people in the comments were trying to reassure that it's a very hard situation, and they understand whatever choice she does make, whether to help or not her sister. That's what most of the comments are saying. And 3 months later, she makes an update. Just a warning that some people may find this next bit to be disturbing. The limb is gone. My sister had to have it amputated not long after my last post. It's been almost 2 months since she lost the limb, and she is still using drugs. Losing a limb wasn't enough of a wake-up call. She did not go to follow-up appointments and didn't go to rehab. Instead, she went to the streets and is continuing to use drugs. My parents, 55 female and 55 male, have been letting my 29 female sister, 30F, stay with them because she ended up homeless again. But she would either leave to go back to the streets or bring drugs into the house. I took a step back from my parents and was low contact because they wouldn't stop asking me to help her and also to pay for her rehab again. Now I have completely stopped talking to them because they say it's my fault what happened to her. Wow. Multiple doctors told my sister she would lose that limb, yet she continued to do it. Somehow it's my fault though. I was so angry when my parents said that. I had already been no contact with my sister for a long time over her drug use. Now, it'll be the same for my parents. As far as I'm concerned, they all burned that bridge and there's no going back. I'm done with the 3 of them. To reiterate what I said in my last post, I don't care if not helping my sister makes me a bad person. So anyone telling me to have compassion for her can save it. Also, this wasn't a case of her having an injury and a legal prescription that was out of control. By my sister's own admission, she started taking opioids at parties and because it was fun. Now the drug supply in our province is tainted, and the doctors warned her several times what would happen if she kept doing it. Even after everything that happened, she is still using. She is the only one responsible for what happened to her. And this is just such a sad situation. Not only did the OP lose their sister, but they also lost their parents. And I find it utterly disgusting that the parents are blaming the OP for what happened to her. That is so wrong and disgusting in my opinion. I mean, obviously the parents are in a complete shitstorm of things going on. I mean, I can't imagine. But for you to blame your daughter and say it's her fault for your sister's drug addiction, and also it's your fault for her losing a limb? How? I mean, the OP outlined in the last post, she spent all her savings for the first round of rehab, and it didn't work. She went through all her savings. I mean, that showed her love. Why would she do it again to herself? She knows that her sister has a problem and she's too far gone. So I'm interested to see what you guys think on this. Do you think the OP should have compassion or not? I mean, I understand what the OP is saying completely, and I totally understand why the OP cut off complete contact with both of them. They both don't love the sister. I mean, also, let's not forget, the OP sister said she would trade her life for drugs. That is even crazier. And so why would the OP have compassion for her sister? Because obviously her sister doesn't have compassion for her in the slightest. Obviously she's in the deep hell of addiction, but that doesn't change what she said. And so for the OP to cut off contact, I have to say I understand. And let's get into some of the top comments. Someone says, as a former addict, I understand this. You have to protect yourself, and the addict needs to hit a bottom in order to change. Trying to help them can just enable their addiction and prevent them from ever recovering. The sad thing is that everyone's bottom or point that makes them realize they need to change is different. Some never hit this point and will either die or wind up in prison, or both. That may be the case for your sister. I'm sure on some level you love and care for your sister. The problem is that addiction changes a person into someone else. Your sister has burned you repeatedly and isn't the same person you knew before addiction. Don't feel bad for not loving that person, but understand that if your sister can get clean, her old self will hopefully come back. I feel for you and all the families that are destroyed by this terrible disease. Someone else says, I mentioned this on OP's other post, but I'm commenting it over here so people can realize just how messed up and tragic the sister situation is. The tainted drugs OP mentions in her post is due to something called, aka Trank, is an animal tranquilizer which is being added to opioids and other drugs. If you are tempted to do an online search, beware. The pictures are gruesome. This is what happened to OP's sister's limb. And then a commenter replies to when the OP said, quote, I took a step back from my parents and was low contact because they wouldn't stop asking me to help her and also to pay for a rehab again. Now I've completely stopped talking to them because they say it's my fault what happened to her. And the commenter replies saying, it sounds like your parents are inappropriate to this, make this a burden to be shifted on you, and they should have paid for her rehab and not you. Myself, I tend to not have as much compassion for addicts who took drugs due to curiosity, for entertainment or fun, when so many efforts have been put forth into public campaigning against doing drugs, never mind real-life examples of addicts themselves. So, yes, she's your sister, is responsible for what's happened to her. It sounds like your parents may be enabling her. Someone else says, your parents are just wanting someone to be mad at. It has to be everyone and everything else's fault that she's this bad. An addict has to want to stop, and it's obvious she doesn't want to. You paying for rehabs and saving her over and over again will do nothing. If anything, it just buys her more time. We tried everything for my mom, but her children, her family, her husband, and her friends weren't enough of a reason to stop. Hitting rock bottom and losing everything and everyone else was not a wake-up call. Getting hepatic, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that word, and almost dying was not enough. So I just had to step away. I won't destroy my life for someone who doesn't care. And I think that final line in that commenter's comment sums it up pretty well. The OP's sister doesn't care. Doesn't care about her sister, doesn't care about her family, doesn't care about her own personal well-being, her body, etc. So why would the OP destroy their life and everything, just, uproot their entire lives and just spend all their money, spend all their time, spend all their time caring for someone who doesn't love them back? So I think that final line of that final comment summed it up pretty well, but I just really wish the OP well, and I hope they're doing better now. And I just hope that the OP's sister can recover from this addiction and turn their life around. But I guess we'll have to wait and see if we get another update. But yeah, I just really hope this situation turns around. I found my wife's body in the closet yesterday. Pretty self-explanatory. I left for work at 9 the night before, got off early since it was my weekend, and went upstairs to find she'd committed S-word from our closet door and a rope. She suffered from mental health issues most of her life, and I guess I knew this might happen one day, but I didn't think it would be yesterday. The police came and went. We're sorry for your loss. Some friends came and picked me up. I'll be staying in the guest room for a bit, I guess. My family came to pick up my son. He'll be 3 in April. My sister-in-law is going to look after him, so at least he'll have his cousins to play with him. I had to comfort her mother, who blames herself. I had to call my job to tell him that I needed some time. I had to call estranged friends, having them disseminate to others I couldn't reach, got drunk, took an Ambien, slept, went to the car wash with a friend, stayed there until 3 a.m., watched Space Jam when I got back, talked to my dead wife in the rain. It's been a roller coaster of tears and laughter and silence, and I have so many questions that can wait. The weirdest thing is, though, I'm feeling intensely aroused, and I'm having trouble falling asleep. Normally, I jerk it to help myself drift off, and believe me, I want to, but I don't think I can. Looking at adult videos seems disrespectful, and I can't close my eyes without seeing her, so here I am, wide awake, spilling my guts into the void. Yesterday was the worst day of my life, and I'm worried about jerking it. God help me. Edit. I just wanted to say how grateful I am for everyone who reached out this morning. I want to say so much more, but everything I type looks wrong. My son and I will be okay. My wife is in no more pain. I have the most wonderful group of people sitting in this room with me right now. I'm not angry. Not with my wife, anyhow. I'm angry with her disease, but I couldn't have asked the girl I married to go on hurting anymore. If you or someone you know is suffering from mental health problems, let someone know. Let someone try. Fight like hell. Kiss your wife when you leave for work. Something I can't explain happened to me, and it's destroying my life. I'm not crazy. I don't, have never, and will never use drugs, not even pot. I haven't drank since college, and even then it was just with my girl because she was a partier. I am by all means sane, or at least I was before something bizarre and terrifying happened to me early morning during the summer of 2022. I have told nobody about this, not a damn soul. If I even mention it to anybody, they would immediately question my mental state. This throwaway account is the only place this story will be. I'm only typing this out on my cell phone because I need some relief for this turmoil in my head. Every time someone mentions secrets, anything paranormal, or even you'll never believe what I saw, my blood runs cold. I get goosebumps and my eyes tear up. I'm a prison in my own mind, and I hope beyond hope posting my story here somehow calms the situation I have going on. If it helps someone else, so be it, but I'll be honest. I'm writing this for me. I'm uncomfortable with talking about this, not because I'm a skeptic, but because I know beyond any shred of a doubt that something paranormal happened to me. The backstory. My car registration was not paid up because my state said they will not be penalizing drivers through the pandemic. Registration is very expensive in this state, and my hours had naturally been cut during the pandemic, so I opted to not pay it. Well, my apartment management did not agree and decided to put a notice on my windshield that having expired tags is a violation of the lease agreement, and cars with expired tags will be towed at the owner's expense, and residents will face possible eviction for repeated violations. Completely insane eviction reasons aside, I couldn't afford my car being towed if I couldn't afford paying the Reggie in the first place, so I opted to park my car at my parents' house, just 2 blocks away from my place. This made it an easy morning walk to get to my car and drive to work. which was also nearby. I made this walk for months. The walk was nice and my mom would drive me home. Don't judge me. My mom is awesome and she was happy to spare me from the 100+ degree summer heat. The route I had to walk took me behind their house. Their backyard was one of those city-maintained cinder block walls with a major road right on the other side. One morning, I was making the walk, and I randomly got the idea to hop the wall to save myself 5 minutes of walking. I wasn't in a hurry. I gave myself plenty of time. This is an odd choice since the wall isn't super sturdy, and it is very tall and rough. Without second guessing the choice, I grabbed the top of the wall, put my foot on it, and hurtled right up and over in one motion. I even surprised myself with how athletic of a move it was. I started walking to the house and something stopped me dead in my tracks. A fucking gnome. Yes, a fucking gnome. You're probably rolling your eyes and smirking right now, but I'm dead serious. I don't know how else to describe it. It was about a foot tall and walking around like it was patrolling the area. It was not human-like at all. It acted almost like a bug or a robot. It had a little spear-like tool with it, and its actions seemed deliberate and dutiful. What's really fucked is that I could feel its thoughts. Not telepathy, but I could just feel that it was aware I could see it. While I absolutely froze with fear, it opened its mouth and silently screamed to some unseen comrades. It wasn't scared of me, but it was absolutely going apeshit about the fact I could see it. I stood there, totally frozen and unable to move while its lower jaw just silently rattled back and forth, still howling silently. Its fear turned into frustration, and suddenly I was back on the other side of the wall, walking about a minute before I was behind my parents' house and decided to make the jump. I was fully aware of what happened, and I still could feel my heart in my ears. I just kept walking. I passed their backyard, completely terrified of what was just on the other side of the wall. I just kept walking. Tears were streaming down my face as I made the only turn to the small connecting street, and another right into the street which I grew up on. I just kept walking. I thought about waking my parents up and telling them what I saw. I contemplated going to the backyard and grabbing a shovel and looking for that little alien gnome fucker. But instead, I dutifully and automatically pulled my keys from my pocket and calmly opened the car door, started the engine, and drove off toward work like I always did. I got to work at 5:45, 15 minutes before my shift started. I wanted to stay in my car and call my wife to cry to her and beg her to tell me it was a dream or a hallucination or something. I was beside myself, but instead I just got out of the car and walked inside to make a cup of coffee like I always do. It wasn't like I was in a trance. It was like someone else was calling the shots and I was spectating. As soon as I got to my work area and greeted my coworker, the spectating stopped and I was in full control again. But my heart wasn't racing and I wasn't horrified. I was just normal me. I can't explain it well, and I know that doesn't make sense. But that's what happened. My mind and body weren't one for about 20 minutes. Then suddenly, they were, and it was just okay. Now you know why this still has me fucked up to this day. What the actual fuck were those things? Why did I choose to scale the wall that morning? Sudden, impulsive choices are so unlike me, it's crazy to even think that I would do that. But I did do that. Want to know how I know? My fingertips were cut up from the top of the wall. They were dirty and raw from pulling my weight up the wall. I'm in tears writing this. This hits home. This really happened to me, and I can never tell anyone this. I finally gathered the courage to tell you random internet strangers, and it was so much harder than I thought it would be. Hopefully getting this off my chest somehow helps me get past this because I've been genuinely traumatized by this experience. Am I really in control of me? Are there some little weird assholes behind the scenes controlling our lives? Guarding us? From what? I'm so lost and I have literally zero answers. I'm not religious and I've prayed for answers. I have nothing but trauma and anger. Thanks for reading. Go ahead and tell me I'm crazy or I had a stroke or something. Let's hear it. And now let's get into some comments. Someone says, you might be having a psychotic break, but after the way the last 5 years have been, I'm rooting for gnomes are real and they can scoot us around in time. The world needs a little magic. Someone else says, I can't give you answers on what you saw, but it is possible that you went into flight or fight mode and your brain disassociated to try and protect itself. Your whole description of not feeling in control of your body and just going through the motions to continue your routine sounds very similar to disassociation. With how terrified you're describing yourself to have been, it is a possibility. Someone replies to that saying, I agree with this. I'm not going to say if the gnome was real or not, but even if it were, it wasn't controlling you, OP. Your brain was just in panic mode. So you can rest easier on that part, I think. Someone else comments saying, this does not sound like a schizophrenic episode, and even though I don't know you, if this is the first time you've experienced something like this, I doubt very much you have schizophrenia. I've worked in mental health for 6 years now, and these are the most common presentations of schizophrenia. Age of onset is between 17 to 25 years old. Typically, you won't experience symptoms before or after those ages. However, outliers do exist. Delusions can be violent or paranoid. Some delusions are harmless. It depends on the person's culture and their particular symptoms. My point is, a one-time experience like this does not indicate schizophrenia or any kind of psychotic breakdown. I think the most probable explanation would be a heat-induced hallucination. In your text, you wrote that it was hot during your walks and sometimes in the hundreds degree wise. That's enough to make anyone hallucinate. And then, surprisingly, a lot of the comments are of people saying that they also have seen gnomes and they believe the OP, which is just wild to me. I have never seen anyone on the internet before claim they've seen gnomes. I mean, I've spent a lot of time on the internet. I do. And this is the first time I've seen such a large group of people claiming they have seen gnomes. So maybe gnomes or seeing gnomes is a common symptom of some kind of psychotic break. I mean, everyone watching right now, have you ever seen gnomes before? Like, am I the only one that's never heard of this? But yeah, everyone in the comment section is like, yeah, I saw it back in my day. What? And I mean, it just seems to me like the OP had a psychotic break of some sort or heat-induced hallucinations or something like that, but the OP makes an edit to his original post responding to a lot of these comments. He says, thank you to everyone who commented. Typing this out did not immediately grant me any type of relief or solace, and I regretted it almost immediately. But after reading the comments as they came flooding in, I realized that it's okay that I had this huge life-changing event. My turmoil and anger has come from the fact that something happened to me and no matter the cause, I have to deal with it alone. I still am not going to tell anyone whom I know what I experienced. But having so many anonymous strangers stop by and tell me on Reddit to stay positive absolutely has helped me way more than I could imagine. It's okay to have unexplainable phenomena happen and just move forward. The impact this event has had on me is absolutely absurd. I didn't get much into it on my original post, but every time the subject of mystery, magic, secrets, sanity, or anything even indirectly related to what happened came up, I would get angry, sweaty, become distant and short with my loved ones, and just totally shift in my personality. Several commenters have identified the possibility of me suffering from PTSD from this. I never would have accepted that I need medical help if I didn't post this message for Reddit. I'm glad I put myself out there because this genuinely is destroying my life. Now I see a peaceful path forward. My wife suffers from PTSD, what some might call actual PTSD because it stems from several very violent episodes directed at her when she was young. Thanks to the positive reactions to the comments here, I talked to her about anxiety, PTSD, and what she does to help herself. I told her I'm just under lots of stress and would love if we could revisit some of the meditation techniques I remember her doctor having her do early on in our relationship. She happily obliged without prying into my situation and even mentioned she noticed I've been off for a little while now. Side note, someone please direct me on where I can nominate her for a Wife of the Year award. She's just fantastic. Anyway, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone here who commented. There are many mixed opinions below about what actually happened. Some people think I'm making it up. Some people think I'm batshit crazy or had a brief episode of schizophrenia. Some people believe me and even opened up about similar events in their own lives. One thing was common with nearly every comment: everyone wished me well. You guys are so overwhelmingly positive that pretty much every single comment showed me you are invested in my well-being. Sure, there were a few trolls, but genuinely, you guys all want me to be happy and healthy going forward. I owe it to all of you wonderful people to prioritize my health and my family's well-being so I can move past this insane one-off event in my life. For the record, I believe it really happened, and I believe there are some mysterious forces that we can't comprehend at play around us. For some reason, it manifested itself as a gnome and turned my life upside down. I don't know why it happened to me, but I know that it did happen. And I just have to say that I hope the OP gets the help he needs, because I'm not going to sit here and be an armchair psychiatrist and be like, well, I think this and that, and I think he has this. No, I'm not going to do that. But I mean, you can just tell. You can just tell from this post that he needs help. He saw a gnome and he said it ruined his life, and I just think he needs to go talk to somebody who can maybe help him calm down from this and recognize that it wasn't real, or, you know, just to move on from this, because I mean, he said multiple times in here that it ruined his life. And so this obviously was a pivotal point in his life for, I guess, just the gnome. It was very weird, but I still think he needs to get help. It's obviously not normal to see gnomes, no matter which way you put it. And so I just hope the OP gets the help he needs, because he does seem like he's a little bit off his rocker here and there. I'm not going to sit here and try to diagnose him with anything or whatever, but it doesn't seem like he's all there. And I just hope he gets the help he needs, because, yeah, it's just very important to get help when you might think you need it. And I think the OP here might need it. I ghosted my family and fiance after what my sister did. I need a little advice on the matter, as I don't know what to do anymore. I was 21 when my fiance asked me to marry him. He was the absolute light of my life. We had known each other since preschool. Our families are very close. He would come and have dinner with us on a daily basis and vice versa. He doesn't have any siblings, but I have 2 older sisters, which is very important as he was also very close with them. We grew up. When we started dating, I don't think our parents stopped celebrating for weeks. He helped me deal with a lot of my anxiety, and even when I gained a little weight and my mother berated me saying he was going to leave me, he told her off and said he loved me for who I was, not for what I looked like. Even though he claimed I was the most beautiful girl in the world to him, we were only engaged for 6 months before the incident. My middle oldest sister, let's call her Nikki, was a very cold person. She never showed any affection. She only ever opened up to my fiance, as she said she saw him as a brother, and he also helped her through a lot of dark times, such as battling drug addictions and breaking the law. She and I never saw eye to eye. I loved her dearly because she was my sister, but I didn't like her as a person. Out of the blue, she tells me she wants to take me clubbing as we had never been together before, and she felt bad that she was so distant to me. I agreed, and that night we went out. Clubbing wasn't really my style, but once I had a few drinks, I loosened up a little and began having fun. The night was going smoothly. until Nikki spotted a guy across the room who she claimed she wanted to climb like a tree. She walked over to him, and within a few minutes, she was back and she had a sour expression on her face. I asked her what was up, but she never said anything. I kept pressing because I didn't want our night to be ruined. She then told me the guy didn't want her number, but he wanted mine instead. I told her he was a loser and there were plenty of guys around who would kill to be with a girl like her. She didn't budge though. She told me she needed to use the restroom and then we would leave. I waited for over an hour. During this time, I was sipping on a lot of different cocktails. I then started feeling really dizzy and lightheaded. I figured I'd just cab it home as I was certain Nikki had left. On the way out though, I bumped into a friend of Nikki's whom she had briefly dated. He asked me if I needed a hand in my car, and I explained I was getting a cab. He said he was getting ready to leave and we could share one. I told him okay, and we walked out of the club together and into the first cab we saw. I tried to find my phone in my purse, but I felt myself getting dizzier and dizzier. I don't remember what happened next as I blacked out, and the next morning I woke up on a hard sofa, my head pounding. When I came to, I realized I was in Nikki's friend's house and my phone was sitting on the glass table in front of me, but it was flat. When he noticed I was awake, he offered some tablets and water and explained that I'd passed out in the cab and he didn't remember my parents' address, so he just picked me up and took me back here where he laid me on the sofa. I told him I needed to go home as my fiance would be worried. He called a cab and I left. When I arrived at my parents' house, my mother, father, my fiance, and his parents were all standing in the living room. I thought they were worried about me, but the instant I opened my mouth, my fiance asked how could I do this to him. I tried to explain that my phone went flat, but he then went on screaming about how could I cheat on him. I was baffled. Why would he think that? I tried to explain the night's events, but I kept getting cut off. Nikki then chimed in and said I was lying, and how could I be so heartless to a man who has been there for me through thick and thin. She went on to say I kept flirting with random guys all night, and then when she went to the bathroom, she saw me leave with her friend. I told her what had happened, and she showed me photos on her phone where, as we were leaving, his hand was on my back, ushering me outside. Yes, the photo did look horrible, and I was so drunk I didn't even realize his hand was on my back at all. My fiance was so angry. He kept shouting, and his mom and mine were both crying. I then asked Nikki to call her friend, and he would confirm nothing happened, but when she called him, he told a completely different story. He said I begged him to take me back to his, and when he did, we slept together multiple times. I saw red and started crying and yelling at Nikki because I knew she had organized this whole thing to make me look bad. I begged my fiance to believe me, but he just shook his head and left. When everyone had cleared out, my mother slapped me across the face and told me to get out. I left and went to a friend's house where I stayed for a few nights. During those nights, I called my fiance crying and pleaded with him to believe me that nothing happened, but it all fell on deaf ears as he never returned any of my calls or texts. My mom texted me and told me she was kicking me out and that she couldn't believe I would do such a thing, and a lot of hurtful other slurs I don't think I could even repeat here. She didn't even give me time to get my things as she threw everything out. I was now homeless. None of my family would take me in, as they chose my fiance and mother's side. I was homeless and single in less than a day and a half. My entire world had been taken away because of Nikki's lies. Now, for weeks, I tried everything to get my fiance back in my family. The limit for me, though, was when Christmas time had come and I went over to my mother's house to try and reconcile. I was sleeping from couch to couch during this time. When I got to my parents' house, I knocked on the door, but no one answered. My friend then called me and told me she just saw on Facebook that my family were in another state celebrating Christmas and they had posted pictures online. Everyone was there. My sisters, parents, grandparents, and even my fiance and his family. When I myself saw the photos, I couldn't stop crying as they all looked so happy. I cried for days and days before deciding to block them all. I even returned my engagement ring. My friend knew someone a couple hours away who was looking for some help in his restaurant, and he even had living arrangements above where he worked, so I could even rent cheap and work at the same time. I wanted to start over with my life, as it hurt me that no one took my side and they all left me to fend for myself. I was able to move pretty quickly and was doing well. The apartment was tiny and I had to work 10 plus hours almost every day, but I was able to save a lot of money. I'm not living in the apartment anymore. I was able to rent a much nicer condo, but I'm still working at the restaurant as assistant manager. Now, it has been roughly 2 years since I left and have not spoken to any of my family. I have no idea what is going on with them until I got a knock on my door. It was my ex-fiancé. I was shocked to say the least. All these feelings came rushing back and all I wanted to do was jump into his arms. But then I remembered the pain I'd felt and tried to slam the door in his face, but he stopped it and asked that I let him explain. He said that Nikki had gotten married and she had confessed that she lied about the situation because she had found someone she loved so much and realized what a horrible thing she had done. I asked him how he found me, and he said my friend told him. My entire family had been trying to get in touch with me and wanted to see me. I told him I needed time to see if I even wanted to have them in my life. He left and I've been a mess since. I don't know what to do. I know I will never ever forgive Nikki. She could rot for all I cared, but it's hard because my other family and fiance didn't know she was lying. But I also felt like they abandoned me too quickly without letting me explain my side. I don't know if I should forgive them. Any advice would be much helpful. Thank you for taking the time to read. And now let's get into some of the top comments. Someone says, frankly, I do not think I can forgive your ex-fiancé or your family for abandoning you so quickly based on an incident that didn't even occur. It's all well and good for them to be sorry, but they didn't even have to completely reinvent themselves on their own the way you did. I wouldn't be quick to forgive or to forget. And then someone else says, you deserve an amazing life and you need to think carefully about the family and fiancé who dropped you so quickly. Plus, your sister is a psychopath, and that's me being polite. She put you in such a position of danger for her own gain and destroyed your life. I can't believe also, given her past, that your parents would side with her on this. Someone else says, I'm petty AF and I would request a meeting with the family and sister's husband, and in front of him, I would tell him how she drugged you and gave to you a stranger to do whatever while you were drugged. How even after making you homeless, jobless, supportless, she still let that go on for years and enjoyed Christmas while not knowing if you were in a ditch somewhere. Blow up her life. Also, you don't owe them anything. They are all horrible people. And then a few days later, the OP makes an update to this entire situation. And the update reads as follows. Wow, guys, I don't even know where to begin. I'm honestly so grateful for all the support, advice, beautiful messages, and awards you guys have gifted. I wish I could personally thank each and every one of you. And I did my best to reply to every message. You guys are honestly so amazing, and I cried reading all the comments. My heart has never been so touched with the amount of love and support I got on this post, and I am so sorry if I took too long to post an update. I was honestly in so much shock, I didn't know how to cope with it. So, I never got back with my ex. I didn't know what to do, but eventually he must have given my phone number to his parents as they texted asking to meet up. I never replied. I was planning on organizing a Zoom meeting, but didn't need to as they also showed up at my door. Well, my father did. When I answered the door and saw him standing there, I ended up throwing up, which he insisted on cleaning. When he was done, we sat down and I just bursted into tears. My emotions were all over the place, and my father has worn the same cologne for a really long time, so when I smelt it, it just brought back all those memories. He tried to hug me, but I pushed him away and asked him what he was doing here. He went on to explain he and my mother are getting a divorce. He said he begged my mother to get in touch with me the minute I left, but she refused and said I was acting like a baby, and if I wanted to leave them after doing something so horrible, then I could do things on my own from then on. I asked him how long did it take for them to notice I was gone. He said they arrived back home after New Year's Eve and were planning on inviting me over so we could talk. That's when they got in touch with my friend, and she told them I left and she didn't know where I was. I asked him why didn't he listen to my side of the story and why did they throw me away so easily. He just started crying. He said he never meant for things to get so out of hand and he wishes more than anything he could take it all back. I said when they found out Nikki was taking drugs and had dropped out of high school, they didn't throw her away. Instead, we all went on a holiday so she could focus on things besides drugs, and during that trip, she got hooked on alcohol, and each time they defended her over and over. He said he had no idea my mother was going to kick me out. He thought I was going to be for a few days, but then they decided last minute to spend Christmas out of state. My mother apparently promised him I would be allowed back home after they got back. I said she threw all away my stuff, but he said everything was still there, and she lied about that. I asked him what has happened to Nikki, and he said she is dead to him. He wants nothing to do with her, but my mother has been crying to him, asking to forgive Nikki as she is not well, and they had already lost one daughter. They cannot lose two. He blocked my mother and Nikki and has been on my ex's case about finding me. My ex caved in when my dad said he blocked my mother and Nikki and told him where I lived. I asked that he never show up again unless I gave him permission, and he agreed. He asked what would happen now, and I said I really don't know, and that he hurt me so badly. I then just went into detail about how much he hurt me and what it felt like seeing them so happy without me and how hard it has been. We were both crying by the end of it, but I was really glad I got it all out. It felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. My dad then said he knew a few places around the area and would help get me a better apartment, and he would then help me get a better job, but I told him I wouldn't be leaving this job as my boss helped me out so much, and I wanted to repay him at all costs. I said I didn't want to do anything for me, but I said I do want to reconcile, but it has to be on my own terms, and it is going to take a very, very long time to trust him again, and I may never trust him again. He said he would do anything to make up for what he did. I asked him why Nikki did this and if she said anything about it. Well, she said she thought my ex deserved better than me and she wanted to see him happy because he was making too many sacrifices in the relationship. She loved him like a brother and wanted to break the engagement off. So that night, she asked her friend to come and escort me out of the club so she could get photos and to take me home so her plan could work. She said nothing intimate happened. I went to sleep on the sofa and that was it. He was up playing video games all night until I woke up, which he has proof of apparently. My dad was planning on getting my stuff from my mother's house and bringing it to me, but I told him I didn't want those things anymore. I then went to ask about Nikki's husband, and he said my mother has been hush-hush with the entire situation, but he had his number and wrote it down for me. After my dad left, I decided to call Nikki's husband. I was sweating the entire time and felt so sick. What if I could hear her in the background? Well, anyhow, when he picked up, I just spit everything out, which I deeply regret because I should have eased into it for him. He sounded really confused and I explained the entire situation again. I even went into detail about her drug and alcohol problems. I was honestly expecting him to curse me out and defend Nikki. Instead, he let out a long sigh and, well, turns out he had a feeling she wasn't exactly innocent. Turns out her and his sister had been having problems and she has been spouting nonstop lies about his sister and has caused a huge rift between them. His sister didn't even attend their wedding. I told him I was sorry, but he should make things right with his sister because Nikki was the problem, not her. We spoke a little more and he hung up. I'm not entirely sure what he is going to do with that information. I hope he cuts his losses and leaves her because he sounded like a really nice person, and even he has lost his own sister because of Nikki. So I've decided to reconcile with my dad, My mother has always run the show their entire marriage, so the fact he is putting his foot down and divorcing her and going NC with Nikki shows he is serious about wanting to make amends. I don't think I will ever reconcile with my mother, as she thinks Nikki is a victim also in all of this, and at this point, I don't care to listen to her excuses. If she reaches out and we can talk, I will update the post again. For my ex, I haven't had the time to meet with him and talk. Though my dad mentioned he wanted to come with his dad, but he told him I would be too overwhelmed if both were there, and seeing them separated will make more clear decisions. He also mentioned my ex was arrested for assaulting Nikki's friend who lied about the entire situation. He was being charged, but the charges were dropped a few days later. I will update the post again, but when I have time to speak to my ex. Thank you guys for being so patient and so caring and just so amazing. And that is actually the last update we have ever received on the situation, and the OP has never made a third update. But let's get into some comments. Someone says, so this means your sister literally drugged you just to break your relationship up? The way you were passing out at the club isn't normal. What about your other sister? Someone else commented saying, it might be a lot of hoops to jump through, but I would seriously consider if any charges could be brought against your sister and her friend. They drugged you. They caused you extreme emotional turmoil, but I totally understand OP if you just want to wash your hands of them and not reopen old wounds. Someone else says, it's actually very karmic that you may have cost Nikki the relationship with the man she professes to love after she did the same to you. At least in your case, it was an act of charity. That poor guy definitely deserves better. My mom and sister starved themselves to death because of my mom's psychosis, and I have to deal with the aftermath. In 2020, my mom and sister died together in a locked apartment, along with my mom's friend. They didn't die in an accident or from illness. They starved themselves to death, together in the middle of summer. My mother had developed paranoid schizophrenia, but the diagnosis came post-mortem, on my request, in desperation to get some answers. She believed my father was trying to harm them and isolated herself and my sister from everyone. For 1.5 years, they lived in fear, completely cut off. She also believed they could survive without food and water by absorbing energy from the universe. Her mental illness spiraled into something so extreme, she convinced my sister to follow her. And she did. They were found about 5 days after death, but the police had no exact day of their deaths because, of course, they did not die at the same time, but hours or days from one another. 3 bodies, actually. My mother, my sister, and a delusional friend of hers who died with them. By the time they were discovered, they were in such a decomposed state that the police couldn't even identify which body was whose, not even by hair. That's how bad it was. We had to run DNA testing, dental records, 3 dead bodies in the heat, locked in, door barricaded. I wasn't there, but my mind was, and still is. I've never read the police reports. I've never visited the place where their ashes are. I still can't believe they're gone. And I feel this weird, almost sick obsession with the grotesque details. The smell, the state of their bodies, what the forensic team saw. Sometimes I Google crime scenes or morgue cases because my mind is stuck there. I imagine what it looked like. I can't stop imagining it. I've built a life, I've run my own business, I've survived, but I'm triggered by things like rotting fruit, the smell, the texture. It all sends my body into a panic. People ask me about my family, and I smile and lie. They joke about crazy people, and I laugh along. I've never told my clients. I've never written this down before, but it lives in me. I feel guilty for not saving them, for the trauma the police and forensic workers had to endure, for my sister who was 29 and could have walked away, but didn't. And sometimes I just feel nothing, just this heavy silence. If anyone else out there has lived through the Same kind of trauma. You can't put into words. If you've ever wanted to scream and vanish and be held all at once, I see you. Thank you for reading this. I don't know what I want from it. Maybe just to not hold it alone anymore. And then the OP makes an edit saying, posting this has been one of the most healing things in my grieving process. I had no idea it would be such a relief to be able to share my story and getting so much support. It hurts that some people might not believe that this story is true. Maybe it just shows how horrible the events were and how it must be hard for anyone to process the case. Trust me on this. The police were so empathetic and equally shocked that something like this can find place. There's no way anyone could have prevented this during the pandemic. Also, yes, I got help from AI to put into words what happened to me and my feelings. Don't blame me for that. Thank you so much for all your kind words and sharing your stories. I hope this post will be a safe space for us to share and vent in and be a memory of my loved ones who don't suffer anymore. I have read every single comment of yours. Edit 2. One of the most healing things for me after posting this was I have finally found peace finding out that there is an actual concept of folie de deux, which is a shared madness or shared delusion. Even if only one person is suffering from actual paranoia and psychosis, it can spread on to others under right and unfortunate conditions. It makes me stop questioning things and finally finding peace with how and what happened. Thank you very much to those who brought this up to clarify and help me answer the biggest questions of them all. Why? I'm 21 and I'm going to die a horrible death. This is long. It's literally my life story. I don't have a TLDR, maybe what the title says, I guess, plus more of these. Pain, disease, death. I'm from Albania originally. My family, mom, dad, and I came to Greece 20 years ago. Life wasn't that great, but it was simple. We were poor. Dad had/has schizophrenia. Home life was rough on me and mom. She divorced him when I was 12. He went back to Albania. I didn't really talk to him that much. We lived with my mom after the divorce. Changed homes. Everything was fine. She was working. I was studying. Not trying my best, but doing good. Fast forward to when I was 17. Last year of high school. My mom was in a relationship with a man who lived in England. She was happy. I was indifferent. But she was happy. It all started with a pain in her left arm. She immediately thought it's from back when my dad had strained it in one of his attacks. She had never gone to the doctor about it because of work. She just bandaged it herself and suffered through. Her pain was getting worse. Movement was getting worse. She couldn't work anymore cleaning houses. My mom went to rheumatologists, orthopedists, finally to neurologists. She was hospitalized. Was a bit of in and out. They couldn't find anything. We went on holiday. The two of us and her boyfriend, who funded it, of course. We hadn't really gone on holidays before then. She had problems walking, got tired easily. In one of our walks, her leg shakes so bad she fell. We thought it was her shoes. They were new, bought by her boyfriend. She wasn't really used to high heels. It wasn't the shoes. Back to the hospital. I was staying alone at home. It was university at minutes exam period. I got in the school I wanted. Great news. Called my mom who was at the hospital. She lit up. I could hear it in her voice. A week later, me and my uncle, her brother who lives in Greece, were called in the hospital. The three of us in the doctor's office, my mom got diagnosed with motor neuron disease. The neurologist didn't really tell all the details. He lied. It may leave and come back sometime in the future, maybe 10 years down the road. He didn't tell us how horrible it is. He didn't tell us my mom will die, that there is no cure currently, just trials. In fact, he didn't really help or guide me in any way. It was like she was never his patient. I promised her I would take care of her, no matter what. I promised her something will turn out good for us. No way. In a year, so much can happen, Mom. We will look back and laugh. Everything will go fine. Day by day, it was worse. She was telling me, and I was seeing it. I tried to go to school to not upset her. "Promise me, you will go to school. You will study. You are strong," she said. I tried not to cry in front of her. I cried every time on the way there and on the way back. It was getting worse. I couldn't bear the thought of going to school when my mom was at home like that, so I skipped a lot. Sometimes her boyfriend came, stayed for a while, helped. He didn't live here though. He left again to work. Then my mom's mother came, my grandma. She helped around too. They all had planned for my mother to go to them, my grandparents in Albania, when things get even worse. She told me, "No, I will take care of you, Mom, no matter what." She was worried about my mental health. She was worried about me seeing her die. She was worried about my school. The day came. We got her into Albania. She would stay at my grandparents'. With them lived my mom's older brother, married with 2 children. I had to return back. I stayed with my mom's younger brother, who lives in Greece, married too, with 2 children as well. I video called my mom every day. Her voice started to change. As her voice was getting worse, my soul was getting ripped apart. I went another time up there. She was having a lot of problems. Huge back pain, couldn't even sit on the wheelchair, needed to rotate her when she slept. She couldn't really sleep. She was uncomfortable and in continuous pain. Around that time, she told us that she will need breathing support. We got it. She felt better. Around that time came her boyfriend too. We were all there. He left a day before I did. She said, "You are all leaving. Mom, we will always be there for you. Always love you." Why did I go back to Greece? She was telling us her parents are getting on her nerves, that she can't live another minute there. So grateful for my uncle's wife. She was enormously helpful and kind to my mother there. Sometime later, I was planning on going again. But as a surprise, I thought, I'll go at the end of the week, Friday. Attend my classes and lab and then stay for a long while. I had a hard time understanding my mom on the call those days. She also seemed in such a really worse mood and complained about my grandparents. They were turning her insane, I thought to myself. Well, me surprising her might brighten her mood at least. Thursday. Phone call to my uncle. He was crying. He was calling his wife. He told me we are leaving today. I knew. I didn't ask. I was silent the whole drive. My uncle was speeding like a maniac. We got stopped, but he talked his way out of it. We were under my grandparents' house. Felt like 200 people were on the balcony outside of the apartment floor. I knew. An uncle of my mom's was waiting us down the hall. He took my hand. "Be strong. Your mother will want you strong. She is not in a good condition." I didn't talk. We climbed the stairs slowly. I entered the room slowly. A lot of women, old, young, were sitting on the couch. I looked at my mom. She wasn't awake. Her eyelids were half open. She was hardly breathing. I told my grandma to make the people inside leave. She told me I can't. "You will." I talked to my mom. I hugged her, not tight because I remember she would be in pain or not breathe easily. I told her about my grade on math. I'd gotten a 10. "I'll make you proud, Mom. I love you and always will. Please watch over me and I'll make you proud." My grandma told me it's time to go. My uncles and my cousin took me to a cafe down the road. I lived with my uncle in Greece afterwards. For about a year, I changed schools, mechanical engineering to electrical and computer engineering. Let's make a change. I tried to be a bit more social. I found some new friends and through them met a wonderful girl. So glad I changed schools. Second semester, I moved to the dormitory to live alone. Close to school, away from my uncle. We got together with that girl. We clicked from the moment we first talked. Beautiful, smart, funny. School was hard, but I didn't mind that much. I was doing great. She was doing great too. We were happy together. Happy. Third year. First semester. My uncle, who lives in Albania, fell while he was working. He took a leave. His leg kept getting worse. He was fearing it was the same thing. Everyone reassured him otherwise. Me too. There's no way. It was already so rare for her. What kind of odds would it be? She was 39 years old. It was the same thing. 5 months ago, he died. I couldn't visit because of the pandemic. I still haven't. Third year, second semester. This semester was really hard, full of assignments and work. Every single day, work and pressure. The semester ended. Exam period was starting. We still had assignments due though, 4 a.m., 3 months ago. About to say goodnight to my lovely girlfriend. My left hand trembles like crazy. For what seemed like 10 minutes, definitely way less, I took a video, sent it to her. Don't worry about it, honey. If it still persists, we'll see about it. Don't search symptoms like you do. We said goodnight. I Googled hand tremor. Long list of causes. Anxiety, stress, blood pressure, etc. Well, I've been really stressed. At the very end of the list, ALS. I dropped my phone. I try not to think about it. I had a panic attack. I called her. She came almost immediately. I love her. I want to marry her, I'm saying to myself. I noticed my pinky falling, and I got more scared. Touching things and lifting them felt different. I knew. My girlfriend kind of moved in with me. I went to a lot of neurologists. To a lot. They all did clinical examinations, didn't see anything. They all thought it was psychosomatic, that I was afraid because of family history. I didn't ever think of the possibility of me getting it now, though. I didn't even know the possibility of me having the same gene was 50%. I had an EMG, turned out fine. Had MRIs, blood tests, turned out fine. I hoped otherwise, so something other than that would be the cause. Everyone around me started to believe it was in my head too. It drove me crazy. Almost every day I was thinking of going to a doctor. Let's get this over with. I was seeing myself get worse every day. Every day some muscle was spazzing out. My wonderful girlfriend, the love of my life, was with me the whole time. I don't know what I would do without her. 2 weeks ago, I had a second EMG. Still fine. Then 5 days ago, had a clinical examination. It took longer. I could hear the doctor's frustration. I could see that everything was worse. Even my facial muscles. Scariest part. We had planned vacations. We were supposed to leave at the 25th. 4 days from now. We were happy. I was happy. I love her with all my heart. I'm 21 and I have ALS. My 4-year-old son is autistic and I hate him. I hate being a parent. I hate everything about this. I'm so tired of having to deal with it all. The tantrums, the lack of comprehension, the aggression, and the inability of us being unable to do anything or go anywhere because of him. I hate my son. I know a lot of people will hate me for this, but I truly just want to get it off my chest without anyone who knows me knowing. I want to finally spill all the beans and get it out here, and I'm hoping this will be cathartic for me. I already know I need personal mental help. Alas, no monies for that. People will also suggest getting him help as well. No money for that either. Though he already is in a local state-sponsored 2.5-hour daily program for kids with disabilities. It's helping, but it only goes so far. There are many things I despise in the world, from politics to healthcare, or their lack of, to business practices to just people in general. I also love many things around here, so no, I'm not a grumpy old man who just hates anyone and everything. There are even people I'd be oh so happy to see suffer a slow and painful death. But there is one thing I would never wish on them: a child with autism. I'll start off by saying I truly don't know how single parents and happy/good parents with kids with disabilities do it. I truly do not understand how you have so much strength to get through the day and still be in one piece mentally. I wish I knew how. Today, all I wanted to do was something seemingly simple, and it even started off well. Go fuel up the car, then walk around a bit to get the coffee. He had fun in the car, but as soon as the car ride was over and we had to go left instead of going right, the tantrums, screaming, scratching, pinching, and all started. He wanted this instead of that. more tantrums, right instead of left next time, and worse and worse. All I wanted was a damn cup of fresh coffee that I didn't have to brew myself. We, wife and I, work from home, and a decent amount of time we have to spend dealing with him. I use that word specifically as it's not the, oh cool, that's a cool car you have, let's play a bit. Not that kind of stuff. It's the, for the 1000th time, do not stab the dog with a stick. Please play with the bouncing ball, not against my head. Again. We've talked about this a million times. Do not touch the audio equipment. And on and on and on. I'm getting tired of having to repeat the exact same very simple things over and over and over, day in and day out. You might say, but dad with an autistic kid. Kids don't understand stuff, you have to be nicer to them. They'll get it. I hear ya. But there is only so many times at this stage you can repeat the simplest of things without getting frustrated. Be it how to put on shoes, just putting them on, not tying them. We need to go right instead of straight. This is how we go up the stairs. Please wait here for 5 seconds while I order coffee. I'm tired. I should have never been a dad. This truly has been the worst decision of my life, and I regret everything about it. Save for a few minor points here and there. These 4 years have been horrible and only getting worse, and it's largely because of him. Logically speaking, it's not because of him. It's just my perception and view of the world in which I cause myself to get angry on things that I should not, such as his inability or ability to comprehend differently than us. Logically, sure. Emotionally, this took an hour to type up. I'm trying to get better. I'm trying not to get mad. I'm trying not to yell at him. I just can't help but be frustrated and yell at him sometimes. I know it's wrong, and there's no excuse for me acting the way I am. I feel like shit for yelling at him and dragging him home while he was wailing because he wanted to go that way, and I wanted to go home so I can go back to work. He doesn't understand the stress of work, of time, of other people's desires/needs. I understand he doesn't comprehend most of what we're doing, both because of age and because of his autism. And it breaks my heart seeing all these normal kids his age doing normal things, and he just doesn't get it, and probably never will. I feel like a failure for having a kid like that. I feel like a failure for not being a better and good enough father, parent, and man to be able to help him properly. I just don't. We're currently back home, and to try to make it up to him, he's gotten some hugs, some of his favorite juice, and I turned on his favorite Lego game. So whoever you people are at Nintendo and Lego who make your games accessible to kids, whoever you are, thank you very much. Without you, I don't know what I'd do. The Lego games are always fun, and we figured he'd like the Lego City game, and he adores it. It's the first real video game he's played, and pretty much the first thing other than just cars and trains he's truly played with. Thank you. And yes, for those wondering, he and I do play it together sometimes in the evenings or on weekends. As for now, I'm going to sit in a corner, drink my coffee, and cry, and think about how shitty of a dad I am. Am I the worst father out there? No. That type of comparison doesn't help me. No matter what, I always end up comparing myself to parents with normal kids. My wife already knows what I think of him, though she doesn't know I hate him. She will never know. Whatever I do, I know I need to be better and do better. At least to round this off on a few positive notes, writing this out has helped clear my sinuses out a bit, as well as being a good load off of my shoulders. The school program he is in has helped me immensely, since he has started as he's now able to put several words together into a mini sentence with some prompting and direction. He is getting surprisingly better rather quickly at video games, so I hope to find more he can play soon. He does like cars, so I'm going to try to find city-oriented ones, though I hear the new Yoshi game is nice. Maybe he'll like it. I don't know. I think they have a demo to try. My mother helps out sometimes, which is amazing when she's able to. And when times are good, things are sometimes kind of fun with him around. I hope he can be both my gaming and hiking buddy in the future. Thanks for reading. Evening edit. Thank you everyone for all your kind words and suggestions. I've never even considered contacting a disability services forum, local community, such as the church groups, and local fellow parents with kids who need help groups. You'll be pleased to know I've given him extra hugs, kind words, snuggles, and playtime. We both calmed down a lot. Many of your heartfelt messages truly made me tear up. Thank you. Tomorrow, I'll be looking into local disability services, and since it's a day off from school, Good Friday, I'll take some time off of work and walk around with him, weather permitting, or play a lot with him. I will be heading to bed now. Thank you all very much, truly. Everything you've all written has given me a lot to think about. Thank you, and good night. And all right, guys, that wraps up some deranged confession threads. And comment down below what you thought about this video. And if you'd like to see these videos be longer, please send in some more confessions. Please make sure you write them with proper grammar and all that sort of stuff. It makes it easier to read. But I read every single confession you guys send in. They might not all make it to a video, but I still appreciate you sending it in. Nonetheless, you can send it to the email in the description. Yeah, thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. It means the world. And like I said, please comment down below your thoughts, and please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. And yeah, this video was just wild. There were some insane confessions, and like the title says, deranged. So I hope you at least found it entertaining or interesting, to say the least. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. It means the world. And this was Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye.